Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 197, Conquering Raya Mountains. In the blink of an eye, 2 days had passed. During these 2 days, the area of Misty Mountains had expanded by more than twice its previous size. The mist covering Misty Mountains had spread as far as the desert in the west, and even reached the base of the tall mountain in the east. But that was not all. If one were to gaze into the depths of Misty Mountains, they would find numerous powerful mutant beasts hidden within. On one mountain, dozens of robust mutant wild boars were rampaging through the forest with an aggressive momentum. On another mountain, hundreds or even thousands of mutant macaques were making incessant and ear-piercing screams. This was the current state of Misty Mountains. Not only had its range expanded, but its strength had steadily increased as well. Of course, what was most worth mentioning was that 2 new Tier 1 Transcendents had appeared under Wuxia's command. One of them was Thorns, who had become a Tier 1 Transcendent after receiving the baptism of Wuxia's life essence. Her control over the blood-red vines had reached a deeper level, allowing her to manipulate them with ease. She could easily extend and retract the blood-red vines that looked like blood-red dragons. These vines could now strangle, entangle, and swiftly cover hundreds to thousands of meters of area, turning the entire region into a lifeless wasteland. The other Tier 1 Transcendent was none other than Old Third, White Tiger, under Wuxia's command. After numerous bloody battles, White Tiger had finally broken through and become a Tier 1 Transcendent. Now he was 6 to 7 meters tall, resembling a small building. More importantly, his white fur had become extremely glossy, sparkling like it had been washed by water. The pitch-black pattern on his white fur gave him an aura of majesty and terror. Facing the current White Tiger, even Transcendents would have their combat power reduced by a significant margin if their willpower was not strong enough. This was the new formidable ability of the White Tiger. White Tiger's might: the tiger is the king of beasts, reigning supreme over them. It constantly exudes a terrifying aura that can make ordinary beasts even lose the courage to resist. Even Transcendents would have their strength reduced by about 10 to 20%. It was indeed a frightening ability. At least because of this ability, White Tiger had truly become the king of beasts. At this moment, Wuxia quietly looked at the sky, a trace of anticipation flickering in his eyes. In just 2 more days, the spiritual energy tide will flood the earth. Murmuring softly, Wuxia heaved a long, deep breath. Raising his gaze, powerful mutant beasts prostrating in North Canyon entered his sight. They appeared to be waiting for his command. Ruhar, an earth-shaking and heart-pounding roar reverberated through North Canyon, causing it to quake slightly as if it were quivering. Upon closer inspection, a massive white tiger slowly stood up. "Master, today shall we go to conquer that high mountain?" asked White Tiger, filled with anticipation. Surprisingly, he could not converse using telepathy. "Ah." Wuxia nodded, not giving a definitive answer. The high mountain in question was located in the eastern part of Misty Mountains, its altitude far higher than other mountains. It was like a barrier that severed the connection between Misty Mountains and Yangtze River. It was said that this mountain range was called the Raya Mountains, and it was one of the highest ranges in China. Moreover, this mountain range was not only high but also vast. Just this one chain of mountains could compare to 1/3 of Misty Mountains in size. It was evident that this mountain range was incredibly massive. Another point that could not be ignored was the mutant beasts hidden deep within this huge mountain range. Even Wuxia could sense several formidable and ferocious presence, not to mention those he could not perceive. Although Wuxia was terrifying now, most mutant beasts were equally mysterious. There were many mutant beasts that could hide their presence. If Wuxia was not mistaken, this massive mountain range should have spirit stone mines deep within it. Otherwise, it would not have given birth to so many transcendent mutant beasts. Smiling, Wuxia's gaze toward the high mountain could not help but carry a hint of anticipation. If these were spirit stone mines of different attributes, he could greatly increase his spiritual energy in a short time. "That mountain range is quite dangerous," Thorn stated in a low voice. She was also a bit worried. As a plant monster, her senses were exceptionally sharp. She could naturally sense the extraordinary nature of the Raya Mountains. This was also the reason why even when within Misty Mountains, they had not ventured into Raya Mountains until now. Just on the basis of their senses, it was evident that these mountains were dangerous. If they delved deeper, it could be easily imagined how more dangerous these mountains would turn out to be. Be that as it may, today was different. As if he had thought of something, Wuxia suddenly looked towards a specific spot on the ground and calmly ordered, "Come out." The moment he gave the order, the ground violently trembled as an indescribable yet terrifying aura swept over the entire North Canyon. It was vast and boundless, as if it encompassed everything. Even powerful mutant beasts like White Tiger and Thorns could not help but have their pupils shrink. After a moment, a figure appeared before them. It resembled a sculpture, hard and yellowish-brown in color. The figure just stood still like a mountain, but the pressure it was giving off made everyone feel a little powerless. Qin Gang, the child of the earth, an elemental life form. After several days of training, he had finally gained control over his strength. His combat power had reached its peak. It could be said that among mutant beasts of the same level, there were few mutant beasts that could compete with him. Even with White Tiger and Thorns working together, it would be extremely difficult to hurt him. This was the elemental life form, the most powerful yet mysterious type of life form. Lord Divine Tree. Greeting respectfully, Qin Gang knelt down and looked toward Yu Ziyu's tree body with a look of fervor in his eyes. Ah! Nodding slightly, Yu Ziyu ordered, "This time, when you can join everyone to conquer Raya Mountains." "Yes, Lord Divine Tree." After agreeing in a very respectful voice, Qin Gang stood up. When he turned around and noticed the stunned White Tiger and the astonished Thorns, Qin Gang shook his head imperceptibly. Even in their dreams, White Tiger and Thorns had never expected for him to make an appearance here. Not mentioning them, even he himself did not expect it. However, this does not affect his excitement at the moment. Raising his hand and looking at the great White Tiger, Qin Gang greeted with a smile, "Long time no see, Brother Tiger." Then, Qin Gang cast a deep gaze turned to Thorns, who was no longer the same as before. "Nice to meet you again. I am the Earth Guardian under Lord Divine Tree, Qing Lang." "Ah." After a moment of silence, Thorns also looked at Qing Lang with mixed emotions. She had known Qing Lang since the beginning. He had been following Yu Ziyu from the very start. But she had not expected Qin Gang would have grown to such an extent. Heaving a long deep breath, Thorns also proactively responded, "Thanks to Divine Tree's guidance, I now call myself the Daughter of the Mountains, Thorns." Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 198, The Forces in the Darkness. With a simple self-introduction, these two former companions had recognized each other. In the end, they had made their own choices. Now they were working together once again. Only, as if both had realized something, they looked in the same direction. In that direction was a treehouse. A person happened to be standing inside the treehouse by the window, looking in their direction. Qin Gang heaved a sigh, but he did not say much. Instead, he waved his hand and proposed, "Let's go and conquer Raya Mountains as soon as possible." Nodding, Thorns also chose to follow after Qin Gang. Besides these three transcendents, White Tiger, Qin Gang and Thorns, Sarcosuchus, was also venturing out of Misty Mountains this time. Without the spiritual energy monitoring satellites, China had lost their surveillance over the entire Sichuan belt. Now, not to mention walking out of Misty Mountains, even if Sarcosuchus wantonly released spiritual energy fluctuations, it would not attract China's attention. Meanwhile, in a certain dark and mysterious place in the human territory, arg arg. As if suppressing something terrifying, horrible roars echoed incessantly. Bang. Star. Accompanied by something heavy crashing on the ground, the entire square trembled violently, as if hit by an earthquake. However, if one were to look toward the center of the square, they would see a burly figure with the head of a wolf and the body of a human, looking disdainfully. "It's too easy," stating in a voice full of disdain. The monster kicked something. The next moment, a huge piece of strengthened rock that weighed like a couple tons went flying like a football. Boom. The strengthened rock howled through the air, flying toward one corner. But before it could hit the ground, a cold voice suddenly sounded on the other side, "You're disturbing me." Although the voice was cold and detached, it was quite captivating. In a moment, a graceful figure emerged from the darkness. Then she casually waved her hand as sharp claws protracted from her hand. Schlick. With a sound similar to a tearing cloth, the massive reinforced rock momentarily paused in the mid-air. The next moment, with a deafening boom, the rock that weighed a couple tons blew up into dust. At this moment, if one were to peer into the darkness, they would definitely lay eyes on an extremely unusual figure. The figure had jet-black cat ears that looked very cute. And behind her, a long and slender tail swaying gently. Catwoman, a Genomarine and a single-digit designation, number 5. She was an out-and-out peak warrior. Clap clap clap, Clear applause echoed from the depths of the darkness. The werewolf and Catwoman's eyes narrowed simultaneously. In the direction of the sound, they saw a glimmer of light rising from one corner of the darkness. Is another human joining us? With a sly smile, a playful expression appeared on the werewolf's face. Then his entire body dove down. Boom. His speed was extremely terrifying, to the extent that he almost created a sonic boom. However, in a moment, a shocked shout of exclamation suddenly rang from the depths of the darkness, as if he had discovered something unbelievable. How is this possible? Before he could speak anything anymore, a burst of flames suddenly illuminated the darkness. Before the Catwoman could react, a torrent of flames had already swept through more than half of the underground square. And from within these blazing flames, a battered and a bit charred figure suddenly flew out. Cough, cough. Coughing repeatedly, the werewolf gazed toward the depths of the darkness, still in disbelief. How is this possible? How could a mere human have such power? The werewolf muttered in a voice filled with unwillingness, glancing at his charred arm in shock. Just a single clash had left him burned like this. He simply could not believe it. What he found even more terrifying was that the person who did it was just a young girl. Yes, a young girl. Slowly raising the gaze, a graceful figure emerging from the depths of the darkness entered everyone's sight. She was wearing a windbreaker, and her jet-black hair flowed like a waterfall. Flames happened to be intermittently flickering in the depths of her eyes as a few fire butterflies slowly disappeared in between her fingers. Much to their dismay, this stunning figure appeared to be 17 to 18 years old. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from the darkness introducing the figure. She is the Flame Princess, Miss Ling Air. She has come here to check out our Geno Marines and is also going to be cooperating with us on the upcoming mission. While speaking, a man in military uniform with a rather majestic aura appeared behind Ling Air. Rin Yong, one of the team leaders of the Geno Marines as well as the 7th instructor of these monsters. Flame Princess? Mission? Murmuring, the Catwoman looked at the nearby young girl with astonishment. She had naturally heard of the Flame Princess. However, she had never expected for the Flame Princess to be this strong. It must be brought to notice that the werewolf was not weak. In Geno Marines he was number 6. He was second only to her. In addition, ranking was everything in Geno Marines. Every Geo Marine with single-digit designation was a superhuman, and each of them was unfathomable. Currently, 7 of the top 10 single-digit Geo Marines were present here. The 2 of them were number 6, the werewolf, and number 5, Catwoman. As for the others, except for number 3 who was erased by China due to him going on a rampage, the remaining few were all deep inside this base. At this moment, as she laid eyes upon the 2 inhuman figures not far away, Ling Air's lips curled up slightly. She had heard of the Geno Marines long ago, but this was the first time she was seeing them. Nonetheless, she could not help but admit that the Geno Marines really lived up to their reputation as one of China's top-secret units. Their combat power was indeed formidable. These 2 individuals alone had a spiritual energy of over 50,000 to 60,000, and their combat power was astonishing as well. Had it not been for the fact that Ling Air's strength had far surpassed those of the same rank, she might not have been able to withstand the werewolf's fearsome attack. A playful smile flashed on Ling Air's lips, not minding the werewolf's sudden attack. Instead, her gaze turned and settled toward the darkness before apologizing. I apologize for my sudden intrusion. Immediately after, Ling Air requested something that left the Catwoman and werewolf mouth agape. I've heard that your Geno Marines number 0 is incredibly strong, terrifyingly so. I wonder if I could have the honor of learning a thing or two from you? Silence. Everyone sunk into a deathly silence. Even though Instructor Rin Yong knew Ling Air's intentions, the corner of his lips still twitched uncontrollably. However, when he considered Ling Air's own strength, he could only shake his head helplessly. A clash between monsters, huh? Feeling helpless, Instructor Rin Yong took the initiative to remind her. Miss Ling Air, we are about to head to Misty Mountains. Please try not to stir up trouble. For a moment, Ling Air was at a loss for words but eventually agreed. However, if one were to pay close attention, they would notice a playful look in her eyes. Because just now she had detected a strong and pungent scent of blood. Accompanying it was a terrifying pressure far beyond that of ordinary humans. Number 0, the vampire, born of bloodlust and madness, was a terrifying entity that was desperately kept under control. He was a true monster. He was the only weapon the military was reluctant to use due to his overwhelming power. If it were not for his excessively formidable strength, the military would not hesitate to eliminate him, and he would never have survived till this day. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 199, Genamarine's arrival. Late at night. Casting a deep glance at Raya Mountains not far from Misty Mountains, Yuziyu's eyes narrowing slightly. Under the cover of the night, the towering mountains appeared like a colossal monster, exuding an indescribable sense of oppression. However, this great mountain range had become the hunting ground for Sarcosuchus and other mutant beasts. Yuziyu chuckled in his heart as his eyes flickered with anticipation. Just then Yuziyu suddenly froze as if sensing something. They're here? He pursed his lips into a faint sneer as his gaze shifted toward the south of Misty Mountains. In that direction, a group of rats had sneaked in. On the outskirts of Misty Mountains within the dense mist. Tap, 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 accompanied by heavy footsteps, for blurry figures could be made out in the hazy mist. What was surprising about these figures was that while two of them appeared human, they did not seem entirely human. One had the head of a wolf and the body of a human, whereas the other had cat-like features, with a long black tail swinging left and right behind the figure. As for the last two, although they were humans, they were still quite unusual. One happened to be a young girl, but she was surrounded by flames. And the last person was draped in a black windbreaker. Even though he was suppressing it as much as possible, his intense, nauseating smell of blood was still discernible, making others instinctively avoid him. This was the leader of the Genomarines, known as Number 0, the vampire. This time, only 3 members of Genomarines had ventured deep into Misty Mountains, while the other members had dispersed in various directions, gradually closing in. Apart from the 3 members of Genomarines, there was another individual, a prodigy of China, Ling Er. The reason Ling Er was sent was because she volunteered. One reason was that Misty Mountains were her hometown, and she was quite familiar with the area. The other reason was that the silver-haired middle-aged man was her teacher. And she was willing to venture into this dangerous territory to search for her teacher. It was quite a convincing reason. At least, that was what she said to persuade most of the military brass. Furthermore, a few trusted confidants of the silver-haired middle-aged man had a hint of closeness in their eyes when looking at her. Can General Li really be trapped in a place like this? The wolf-headed man, who could speak like a human, taunted with a playful tone. He was no stranger to General Li, who was just like the vampire, a complete monster. Despite both being Tier 1 superhumans, General Li had managed to injure him with a single sword strike, which was truly terrifying. If you don't speak, no one will think you as a mute. Responding in a cold voice, the Catwoman snorted with disdain. This guy is really the worst. Sooner or later he would die due to his arrogance. As these thoughts swirled in her mind, the Catwoman turned her gaze toward the 2 figures walking in front, her eyes narrowing slightly. The Flame Princess Ling Er and the vampire Carrie Hall. Strange, when did these 2 get close after the fight? Just then, as if sensing something, the figure in a black windbreaker far ahead suddenly stopped. Yo! Calling in a playful tone, the figure disappeared from the spot all of a sudden. By the time the Catwoman reacted, she suddenly felt a tightness around her back. At the same time, a cold and extremely pale hand slowly moved along her neck. How's it going, kitty? Missed me? Softly whispering, the figure lifted the hat atop his head, revealing a handsome young man with long platinum blonde hair. Carrie Hall was a man of mixed heritage, inheriting the physical features of people across the ocean, and the bloodline from China. If it were not for his terrifying vampiric innate talent, this young man would surely have excelled in various fields. Nevertheless, even as a superhuman, he was still a force to reckon with. His fearsome strength had put the military brass ill at ease. He slowly opened his mouth, revealing his sharp fangs. But the next moment, after noticing the terrified expression on the Catwoman's face, he waved her away. Dickiska, I can't afford to drink the blood of a subpar specimen like you. Saying so, he retracted his fangs and turned his gaze back to the silhouette not far away. If you dare to target me, I guarantee that I'll reduce you to ashes. Hearing the voice from the distance, Carrie was slightly taken aback. But the next moment he pursed his lips, revealing a mischievous smile. Ashes? Now that's something to look forward to, muttering, Carrie gazed at Ling Er's retreating figure, his eyes burning with ever-increasing passion. However, this passion was unlike the gaze of a predator toward its prey, rather it had indescribable complex emotions. Apart from General Li, she was the only human who had ever wounded him. And she was a woman no less. Tisk interesting. However, at this moment, what he failed to notice was the nostalgic look on Ling Er's face. This is the first time I've returned here as Ling Er, whispering to herself. Ling Er's steps became even lighter. She felt like she was returning to her home. The mist shrouding Misty Mountains meant nothing to these Tier 1 superhumans. In just a short while, their group of 4 had already arrived at the inner part of Misty Mountains. However, at this moment, roar, 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 deep, resonant roars as if coming from prehistoric times suddenly echoed through the mountains. The legendary mist beasts are here, the Catwoman warned as her pointed black cat ears twitched slightly. But just then, asterisk boom. Asterisk with a deafening boom, the clouds and mist suddenly converged, twisting with each other to form a massive vortex. The next moment, an enormous bull, appearing as if it was carrying a mountain on its back, gradually emerged from the vortex. A giant bull? At the sight of it, the werewolf grinned and actually advanced instead of retreating. He fiercely kicked the ground, causing the ground to shake before shooting toward the mist-formed giant bull. Go to hell. With a violent shout, the werewolf punched toward the giant bull. Crack! The very air seemed to have exploded while raging spiritual energy converged on the fist. After a moment, a shockwave rippled out before a wave of wind, dozens of meters high, swept through the surroundings with a piercing howl. At the same time, the punch landed solidly on the mist beast, the mountain-back bull. However, much to the werewolf's bewilderment, his punch seemed to have hit nothing but air. Apart from the billowing clouds of mist, there was nothing else. What left him even more puzzled was an inexplicable sense of danger welling up within him. As he slowly raised his gaze, the werewolf was astonished to find the massive bull slowly opening its mouth. More importantly, a storm was brewing within its throat. The next moment, with a deafening roar, a massive tornado dozens of meters wide crashed onto the werewolf. Before he could even react, the werewolf was blasted into the ground dozens of meters deep. What was even more tragic was that a colossal bull's hoof descended menacingly from the sky. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 200, Furious Waves of Trees. You idiot. With a sweet-sounding rebuke, after images of a graceful figure cut through the air. Faster than one could imagine. This was what Catwoman excelled at the most. As a mutant human, she had integrated the genes of the mutant cat, which bestowed her with speed and reflexes far beyond human imagination. And now, her sudden burst of speed even caused Ling Er to narrow her eyes slightly. In an instant, the afterimages skimmed through the forest before flogging the werewolf's figure in the pit away. Right at this moment, if one were to look at the crater, they would find a huge hoof having fallen in the crater. Asterisk boom. Asterisk a deafening boom reverberated through the sky as the ground fiercely quaked again. Immediately after, the ground centered around the spot where the bull's hoof landed began to crack and split. In the blink of an eye, the ground within a radius of 400 to 500 meters looked like a spider's web. Gulp! The werewolf gulped hard at the sight of this, utterly confused. After a moment, he cried in astonishment, "This isn't scientific. I can't even touch it, so why can it hit me?" While crying in a bewildered voice, the corners of the werewolf's mouth twitched uncontrollably. Stupid. Coldly snorting, the Catwoman focused her gaze on the brow of the mist beast giant bull. Just now, she had felt strange fluctuations from that location. Meanwhile, within the heart of North Canyon, Yuziu's eyes narrowed slightly, silently watching the 4 distant figures. It was just not them, but 4 other people were advancing toward Misty Mountains from another direction. In terms of aura alone, they were not inferior to the 4 on Ling Er's side. Unfortunately for them. Today he no longer needed to hide himself. As this thought crossed Yuziu's mind, his sea-like vast spiritual energy started surging. Boom, 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 the ground started quaking as if tens of thousands of beasts were stampeding. Consequently, countless mutant beasts hidden behind the veil of mist began to tremble uncontrollably. Each of these newly arrived mutant beasts understood that deep within the mist, a majestic and powerful existence had fully awakened. At this moment, if one were to look from the sky, they would undoubtedly see the tree roots stretching for thousands of kilometers, rolling like waves towards the end of Misty Mountains. Meanwhile, the squad led by the vampire and Ling Er suddenly had their expressions changed. What's happening? Growling, the werewolf's gaze was no longer focused on the mist beast not far away, the mountain-back bull. Because, at this moment, a strong sense of crisis gripped his heart. Compared to this impending crisis, this mist-formed beast was nothing. His hair stood on end bit by bit as his spiritual energy began surging. What shocked the werewolf even more was that the entire ground seemed to be trembling. What's going on? The Catwoman, as if realizing something, suddenly crouched down, listening intently to the ground. However, the next moment her face suddenly drastically changed. "Be careful!" Shouting, she promptly leaped into the air, jumping dozens of meters high. Right at that instant, boom. With a deafening roar, a black tree root as thick as an arm, resembling a black python, suddenly tore through the ground and shot toward the Catwoman in the sky. On the other side, even without the Catwoman's reminder, the werewolf, looking at the end of this mist from where wave-like roots were coming from, was frightened to the core. As a fusion of human and mutant beast and one of the strongest member of their genomarine, he felt a terrifying presence. However, this terrifying presence was tantamount to a true despair. Utter despair. The presence's surging spiritual energy was like an ocean. A tremendously heavy pressure was bearing down on them. Even when the presence was in the distance, the pressure radiating from it sent them into despair. Not to mention the fact that the waves of roots happened to be swarming toward them. Damn it, don't tell me there's a terrifying tree monster here. Crying in an utterly strange and horrified shrill, the werewolf turned his gaze toward the sky. Meanwhile, in a corner, two people were standing quietly. "Aren't you afraid?" Carrie asked in a little surprised voice, looking at the girl beside him. Ling Er did not give any response, rather the corner of her lips rose slightly as if in anticipation. Seeing Ling Er's smile, Carrie was even more stunned. After a moment, as if realizing something, an excited look appeared on his face as he stated, "We are truly kindred spirits." Kindred spirits? Ling Er could not help but ask, a bit puzzled. Yes, filled with anticipation for such an unknown formidable existence. At this moment, just feeling this terrifying aura makes my body tremble uncontrollably. And this isn't fear, it's excitement. I've always yearned for a battle with truly strong warriors. Carrie's coat fluttered uncontrollably as he got increasingly excited. While speaking, Carrie's surging blood-red spiritual energy began filling the air, and it was visible to the naked eye. More astonishingly, his skin grew paler and a pair of fangs slowly emerged. The next moment, as if realizing something, Carrie abruptly turned and asked, his eyes filled with excitement, "Do you also long to battle such an unknown formidable existence?" However, before he could finish speaking, the expression on Carrie's face suddenly froze. Much to his dismay, Ling Er waved her hand at him with a playful smile on her lips. "You continue on." Continue on? Much to Carrie's confusion, he saw a root as thick as an arm rising under Ling Er's feet, slowly lifting her up. Then it lifted her up toward the sky. Hey, what are you doing?" Carrie asked in confusion, seemingly a bit slow to react. "What do you think?" With a mischievous smile, a hint of mockery appeared on Ling Er's face. After a moment, with deafening howls, countless roots smacked toward the vampire, carrying waves. "Master, do you think they can withstand your first round of attacks?" Standing on the tree root that lifted her into the sky, Ling Er could not help but cover her mouth and chuckle at the sight of the figures frantically fleeing on the ground. "They probably can't hold on." With a degree of certainty, Yuziyu further added, "Although they've covered dozens of kilometers, these little guys are only at tier 1. They will have an extremely hard time escaping the net of my tree roots." Saying so, Yuziyu's spiritual energy surged once again. With deafening rumbles, even more waves of surging roots surged over. What was even more incredible was that these roots, which resembled giant black pythons, were freely weaving through the forest. Chasing, surrounding, attacking. In the blink of an eye, they had leveled thousands of meters of terrain. When the dust settled, only two faintly breathing figures lay quietly in the deep pit, their faces filled with despair. On another side. Damn it. This is insane. While furiously and desperately roaring, the vampire actually transformed into a swarm of bats and fled frantically. And behind him, swoosh swoosh swoosh, an endless swarm of roots happened to be chasing after him, each and every root vying to reach him first. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 201, Blood Spiritual Energy. A new discovery. With a swoosh, a black tree root, like a giant python, instantly struck toward a group of bats fleeing not far away. Boom. Accompanied by a terrifying roar, a whirlwind of terrifying spiritual energy suddenly surged. At the same time, a painful groan resounded in the air. Damn it! Shouting in rage, the vampire, Carrie's aura weakened by a significant margin. Transforming into bats was one often of the most terrifying abilities of the vampire. He could instantly transform into a swarm of thousands of bats. As long as one remains unharmed, he himself remains unharmed. However, what left Carrie somewhat incredulous was that these peculiar roots were able to devour his blood spiritual energy. Every time they came into contact, his blood spiritual energy would decrease slightly. And what did the decrease in spiritual energy signify? As far as others were concerned, it might be manageable. However, it would be fatal for him. He, who rarely got injured, had almost been seriously injured in just a few brief contacts. What was even more terrifying was that right behind him, a surging tide of roots continued to flood toward him. Can you escape? Wuxia, looking at the bats scattering in all directions, mumbled with a hint of playfulness as the corners of his lips rose slightly. Of all the people he could have encountered, he happened to run into Wuxia. With just one encounter, Wuxia had used the status screen to uncover all the secrets of the vampire, Carrie. And what was even more important was that it seemed like he had the vampire completely in the palm of his hand. Race: mutant human. Innate talent: blood-sucking. As someone born with a thirst for blood, he can extract energy from the blood. Unique abilities: blood spiritual energy, an unusual kind of spiritual energy that can easily manipulate blood. In his presence, the blood of weaker beings starts boiling, and could even be easily drawn out and morphed into weapons. Fangs: his fangs are as sharp as the deadliest weapons and can easily tear through defenses. Super regeneration: his unique constitution grants him formidable regenerative abilities. Even if he is crippled, he can recover using his blood spiritual energy. Familiars: it can congeal 3 drops of blood essence, using which he can artificially create familiars. Any entity that consumes his blood essence becomes berserk and bloodthirsty, and unconditionally obedient to him. Over time, they gradually lose their own consciousness and eventually become puppets. Transformation into bats: he could instantly transform into a swarm of thousands of bats. As long as he remains unharmed, he himself remains unharmed. Have to admit, this vampire is indeed quite unusual. No wonder Qing Er wanted me to not let him escape. Still, regardless how strange he may be, having roots that can devour spiritual energy, I guess I can be considered to be the true nemesis of vampires, huh? Not to mention the fact that he was just a Tier 1 Transcendent, and even if he was a Tier 2 Transcendent or even Tier 3 Transcendent, he would have met the same fate. As these thoughts swirled in his mind, Wuxia's corners of lips curled up slightly, revealing a cold smile. You're out of luck once you met me. Saying so, Wuxia's spiritual energy suddenly surged as countless glittering green specks of light rushed toward the roots. The next moment, the vampire's face drastically changed as the roots suddenly accelerated. Immediately afterward, they immediately transformed into a torrent, completely inundating the hill where he was. A tragic scream abruptly came to a stop. Only the tree roots swelled and contracted as if they were swallowing something. It feels quite wonderful. Wuxia could not help but exclaim, drawing the vampire's spiritual energy. Unlike the spiritual energy of other mutant beasts, a vampire's spiritual energy was unique. It was like the life essence, exceptionally pure. Just by consuming a little, Wuxia felt as if he had drunk the most refreshing beverage on a scorching summer day. It felt refreshing, extremely refreshing. Moreover, while he was feeling refreshed, a strange feeling surged within him. Subconsciously, he glanced at his status screen. Much to his astonishment, some blurry words had appeared on his status screen, resembling tadpoles. However, these new words were too indistinct for him to decipher. Is his spiritual energy so unique? Feeling a little surprised, Wuxia shot a deep glance at the blonde-haired figure on the hill, which had been submerged by countless roots. Much to Wuxia's astonishment, he could begin to cultivate a unique ability just by devouring his spiritual energy. One could easily imagine what this meant. Is this guy some kind of walking and talking treasure of heaven and earth? Suppressing the shock in his heart, Wuxia decisively bound the unconscious figure with a root and carried it to the depths of North Canyon. As for the other superhumans, unfortunately, Wuxia had already buried them in some deep corner of Misty Mountains. As for the reason why he had shown no mercy was because they had come with Ling Er. In order to prevent Qing Er from being exposed, Wuxia would not allow any of them to leave Misty Mountains alive. Only the dead could keep the secret from ever getting out in the open. If he had not been intrigued by the vampire's body, the vampire would not have seen the light of another day. Shifting his attention, Yuziu's consciousness was already back at North Canyon. Raising his gaze, a young girl with smooth and shiny black hair sitting on a piece of his root entered his sight. Her tender feet happened to be touching the water in the spirit pond. "Master, has everything been resolved?" Lifting the locks of hair covering her eyes, Ling Er asked with a smile. "Yes." Nodding, Yuziu added, "Apart from the vampire, all the other superhumans and even the little mice following you have all been completely eliminated." "The vampire isn't dead?" Ling Er's face was filled with doubt, seemingly a little surprised. In her impression, her master was not someone who easily showed mercy. Unless the vampire had some value. Seemingly aware of Ling Er's thoughts, Yuziu's lips curled up slightly as he explained, "I discovered something interesting from this guy." Yuziu then explained the matter of blood spiritual energy. "I see," Ling Er mumbled softly, her face revealing a tinge of curiosity. She was a little intrigued by the mysterious nature of the vampire's blood spiritual energy. However, at this moment, as if she remembered something important, Ling Er also reminded, "China has tampered with every genomarine. If they find out." But before Ling Er could finish, Yuziu interrupted her, assuring, "Don't worry. When these guys penetrated deep into Misty Mountains, all signals were already severed by my spiritual field, and most of their spiritual energy fluctuations were concealed by the mist. In other words, China is currently in the dark, unaware of anything." Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 202, The Legendary Race, the Vampire Clan. Indeed, China was in the dark. It was cruel but also the truth. This was the collision of the transcendence and technology. The problem was that China knew very little about Misty Mountains. More importantly, they had little to no idea about the terrifying beings lurking deep within Misty Mountains. Under such inconsistent information, even the most mysterious and fearsome genomarines of China had met total annihilation. As if thinking of something, Yuziu's gaze shifted to the nearby girl. With Ling Er around, one could not say that they were completely annihilated. However, in a moment, as if he had discovered something, a hint of astonishment flashed on Yuziu's face, and even a bit of bewilderment as well. In his astonished gaze, a figure slowly shed her clothes off and made her way toward the spirit pond. Speechless and shocked, Yuziu did not know what to say. At this moment, as if sensing Yuziu's confusion, a voice filled with amusement also rang, "Master, although this body has already reached the transcendent level, it still has too many impurities. So, I'll be using the spirit pond to cleanse this body." "I see." After listening to Qing Er's explanation, Yuziu awkwardly averted his gaze before waving his branch. Boom! The next moment, clouds of mist bellowed, forming a natural mist barrier that concealed the dazzling scene of spring. Have to admit, Qing Er had developed quite a stunning figure. After savoring it for a moment, Yuziu decisively shook his head, dispelling this untimely thought. Shortly after that, one of Yuziu's roots brought back the vampire. The vampire, Carrie, a human mutant. Different from the usual physical mutations, vampires were more like a mutation in blood. Furthermore, their name corresponded to an ancient race recorded in human history, the vampire clan. Legend had it that the vampire clan was a terrifying race that survived on blood. However, their blood-sucking tendencies were not out of cruelty but for survival. Now, looking at the young man with silverish long hair and a face paler than paper in front of him, Yuziu's eyes could not help but flicker. Could he be the mark of the awakening of the ancient race? Or is he from the previous era, just like the silver-haired middle-aged man? One speculation after another popped up in Yuziu's mind. He also felt that some of them made sense. Legends, myths rarely contained baseless rumors. Everything could be traced back to its origins. And the legend of the vampire clan was intertwined with the history of mankind. Perhaps in the distant past, there were people who lived off blood like this. It was even more likely that in the previous era, there was such a terrifying race. According to Qing Er's records found in the relics of the silver-haired middle-aged man, various races used to thrive in the previous era. Among them 100 were considered supreme. From this, one could see how vast that era was. And the possibility of the existence of a high-level race that lived off blood in such an era was not without its merits. Yuziu's speculation about them being a higher race stems from the fact that the vampire clan has persisted throughout history. He believes that they must possess some abilities, otherwise their existence would not have been documented over the ages. Thinking about this, a hint of playfulness tugged the corner of Yu Ziyu's lips, looking at the silver-haired young man far away. If my speculation is correct, then in the not-too-distant future, one ancient race after another will return. But at that time they will appear in new identities just like the vampires, werewolves, catwomen and even elemental life forms. And that would truly be the great era. Mumbling in soft whispers, Yu Ziyu became even more excited. There was even a touch of anticipation on his face. Now he was looking forward to encountering these races from ancient legends. Of course, before all, Yu Ziyu needed to train himself well to avoid any mishaps in critical moments. Thinking this, Yu Ziyu waved his branch, sending Vampire into the depths of the earth, placing it in the ice cavern guarded by White Snake. The White Snake, an ice's pet, was a mutant snake hatched from a snake egg given to Yu Ziyu by Sarcosuchus. She possessed the rare ice elemental talent since birth. More importantly, the place resided by White Snake would turn colder and colder over time, until everything had frozen. Such an ability turned her into a natural refrigerator. For this reason, Yu Ziyu also assigned White Snake to guard an area, turning it into an ice cavern. A large amount of food happened to be stored inside the ice cavern. Of course, it was also a good place to put semi-dead creatures like vampires. The severe cold they're capable of freezing everything can ensure the long-term survival of vampires and even imprison them here. And when Yu Ziyu had finished researching that new yet vague ability, he would consider how to deal with this guy. Perhaps this newly born ability was connected to the vampires? Ha! After completing all of this, Yu Ziyu took a deep breath and fell into contemplation once again. Most of China's Genomarines had been mostly eliminated, and the silver-haired middle-aged person's life or death remains unknown to China. For a short while, China would not be making a move against Misty Mountains without the confirmation of the silver-haired middle-aged person and the Genomarine status. Moreover, the spiritual energy tide should sweep across the globe in 2 days. By then, China should be preoccupied with their own affairs, let alone provoke Misty Mountains. As these thoughts swirled in Yu Ziyu's mind, he suddenly froze. Spiritual energy tide, in 2 days. Muttering this, Yu Ziyu's expression drastically changed. Hold on, I seem to have overlooked a very important issue. Since the spiritual energy tide would be sweeping through the globe in 2 days, as the dominant force of Earth, humans must have noticed it already. Not to mention their high-tech equipment, even some local anomalies should be enough to alarm them. Even I was able to detect the spiritual energy tide's arrival 20 days in advance. While I might have detected it thanks to my primary route having penetrated nearly 10,000 meters down the Earth, with humans' advanced technologies, it should not be a problem for them to detect the arrival of the spiritual energy tide at least 10 days in advance. Plagued by worries, Yu Ziyu's emotions were in turmoil. Others might not know, but he was well aware of the terror of the spiritual energy tide. Every extra day he remained in contact with the colorful spiritual energy, his own spiritual energy would become a bit denser. Which also meant that if one managed to withstand it, their evolution speed would exponentially increase. Which means there is a small group of humans who are likely evolving at a terrifying speed, and might have already caught up with some mutant beasts. Of course, this was only Yu Ziyu's speculation, and he dare not reach an early confirmation. However, the good news was that some gaps were not easy to bridge. At least, it was definitely impossible for them to catch up with his evolution speed. At most, a bunch of Tier 1 superhumans must have been born among humans, and a few monsters who might have reached Tier 2. Be that as it may, such superhumans were still far from enough to face him. However, what really made Yu Ziyu helpless was the fact that if the evolution speed of few humans at the top had accelerated, it would very likely cause the conflict between humans and mutant beasts to intensify. At that time, humans would no longer rely on high-tech weapons but would confront the transcendent mutant beasts head-on. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 203 The Army of Mutant Beasts. A sigh escaped Yu Ziyu's lips as he shook his head in resignation. He had guessed it, but what could he do? Despite his immense power, it seemed like there was nothing he could do to stop it. Rather than being fixated on the evolution of other species, it was better to focus on his own. With this in mind, Yu Ziyu's gaze returned to the status screen. The mastery of Mist and River of Earth are both at level 3, but the hallucinogen is still hovering at level 2. Softly murmuring, Yu Ziyu's gaze could not help but flicker. Hallucinogen, Using the mist, you can affect the mind, and even alter the memories of humans or mutant beasts. It was quite a terrifying ability, and if it strengthened further, it would undoubtedly possess unimaginable power. With this in mind, Wuxia glanced at the remaining 3,000 evolution points. These were the evolution points he had recently extracted by himself. Aside from obtaining through hunting and killing creatures, evolution points could also be generated by refining unknown energy in the air. With his current strength, he could extract around 200 to 300 evolution points per day. While these many evolution points were already substantial, compared to tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands evolution points he could obtain while doing absolutely nothing, these points were like a drop in the ocean. I need 7,000 evolution points more to upgrade the hallucinogen ability. Feeling a bit helpless, Wuxia could only hope that Sarcosuchus and the others would bring back some good prey for him. Of course he would not just sit around and wait. Boom, 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 shaking the earth, countless roots emerging from deep within the earth. Any mutant beast that had not been tainted by his aura would be shredded to pieces by these roots, leaving nothing behind. This illustrated the importance of the spirit lake, spirit pond, and even the baptism of his life essence. Not only were they essential for distinguishing friend from foe, but they also set the field for Wuxia's large-scale harvesting every time. Meanwhile, deep within Raya Mountains. Roar, 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 tiger roars shook the clouds as a massive white tiger raced through the mountains. With a casual swipe of his paw, his several meters long sharp white claws left behind trails of white light. Squish, a massive lizard too slow to react fell into a pool of blood. Not enough, not enough. Continuing to roar, the white tiger led a pack of storm wolves further into the depths of Leia Mountains. On another side, the Sarcosuchus swung his enormous tail. Boom! A massive yellowish afterimage streaked across the air, shattering a hilltop with a deafening explosion. The next moment, Gruer with an inexplicable low growl, a mutant beast covered in thorns and even stained with blood, crawled out of a pile of rocks. A mutant hedgehog, and not just an ordinary one. Its black and sharp quills stood erect. Just a glance at it gave a prickling sensation. What's even more hair-raising was that this mutant hedgehog's eyes happened to be bloodshot, as if it had gone berserk. At the same time, a terrifying aura was slowly filling the air. Finally encountered a transcendent? Sarcosuchus murmured in his heart as a hint of excitement finally showed up on his face. In moments he charged towards the nearby black mutant hedgehog, which was about 3 to 4 meters in size. Boom, boom, boom. Their clash instantly produced a series of reverberating claps. Their terrifying spiritual energies kicked up such powerful gusts of winds that they even swept away the storm wolves, and even caused the trees around, some as thick as several humans combined, to bend under the pressure. This was the battle between transcendent. It was far beyond what ordinary people could imagine. Just the aftermath of their battle was something ordinary mutant beasts could hardly withstand. Even golden ants, honey badger, golden monkey, and the other Tier 0 mutant beasts could only stand quietly in the distance, observing this rare battle among transcendents. Its entire body is covered in spikes, its defense is truly impenetrable. Looking at the curled-up black ball with sharp spikes, golden monkey could not help but scratch his head, feeling a bit helpless. Indeed, its defense is quite formidable. It might even hurt itself due to one misstep. Making a casual remark, Golden Ant with his 4 arms crossed before his chest suddenly changed the subject. But unfortunately for it, it's facing fourth brother. Whether it's in terms of physique or spiritual energy, they're not in the same league. Moreover, fourth brother loves physical combat the most, so facing such a formidable enemy covered in spikes will only make him more excited. And just as the Golden Ant stated this, Ruhar, with an excited roar, Sarcosuchus raised his more than 20 meters enormous tail high in the air. In moments, spiritual energy visible to the naked eye coiled around his tail. Tail of steel. Sarcosuchus let out a roar as the very air began shaking. The next moment, with a thunderous boom, Sarcosuchus' tail, which was wrapped in spiritual energy and seemed to have turned as hard as steel, brutally slammed onto the spiky mutant hedgehog. Boom, boom, boom. The earth shook again and again before cracking. At this moment, if one were to look deep into the fissure, they would surprisingly see a half-dead mutant hedgehog lying quietly in a pit several tens of meters deep. Tail of steel, it's a terrifying combat technique developed by Sarcosuchus by combining his control over his body with his vast spiritual energy and his enormous tail. Not only humans had so-called martial arts, But even these highly intelligent and combat-savvy mutant beasts could also develop their unique skills after repeated honing. However, compared to the continuous development of humans' martial arts, the skills of mutant beasts had certain limitations. For example, they were constrained by their race and talents. Like Honey Badger, even if his strength could rival that of Sarcosuchus, it was very difficult for him to learn Sarcosuchus' explosive combat technique, Tail of Steel. And now, after looking quietly at the nearly half-dead mutant hedgehog lying in the deep pit, Sarcosuchus' gaze turned to the sky, where several peregrine falcons happened to be flying. "Take it to the divine tree." Saying this, Sarcosuchus turned again and looked at the mutant beasts behind him, ordering in a low voice, "Let's go, this is just the beginning." "Yes, fourth brother." Everyone responded in unison. Even someone with a temper like Honey Badger followed Sarcosuchus obediently, heading deeper into the mountains. They might provoke, duel, and even disregard the authority of the 9 great beasts in their territory, Misty Mountains. But beyond Misty Mountains, they had to maintain absolute respect and obedience toward the 9 great beasts. This was an ironclad rule of Misty Mountains. As Yu had stated, the bravery of scattered troops is ultimately just 4 hands. A disorganized group, no matter how powerful, was ultimately insignificant. What Yu yearned for and needed was a disciplined and formidable army of mutant beasts. And now, this was just the beginning of its formation. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 204, The Appearance of Panda. Meanwhile, deep in Raya Mountains, in a corner where even ordinary mutant beasts were hard to find, snore. The sound of snoring was as deafening as the thunder itself, even causing the air to vibrate. Upon closer inspection, one would find waves of flames billowing in the air. It was as if waves of fire were spreading in the air. And this was just happening unintentionally when a mutant beast was snoring. Gulp. Gulping hard in nervousness, Qin Gang, who was not far from the mutant beast, was mouth agape at the sight of this. A look of shock and horror took over his face. "Are you kidding me?" He thought that he would be strong enough after becoming an elemental life form. However, after searching the land hard using his senses, he had found such a monster. A monster that could create billowing waves of flames unconsciously while snoring. Its terrifying pressure was such that one's heart and soul could not stop trembling. He happened to be very familiar with this monster. Its physique boasted a plump, rotund form covered in contrasting black and white fur. A circular face with large coal-black eye patches, complemented by a pair of endearing furry black ears perched atop its head. In its entirety it looked extremely cute. This was China's national treasure, Panda. Renowned worldwide for its cuteness. However, now looking at the panda lying on its back, gently patting its belly with its front paws as if sleeping, Qin Gang could not associate it with the word cute. Darn it, a Tier 2 Transcendent, and not just an ordinary Tier 2 Transcendent. Qin Gang could not help but roar inside as an instinct to run away gripped his heart and soul. "I can't afford it, I really can't afford to provoke this monster." Even if rich fire attribute spiritual energy was surging behind this monster, evidence of a fire attribute spirit stone mine, he did not want to provoke it. One wrong move and he would lose his life. "No, I need to inform Lord Divine Tree right away. Only Lord Divine Tree can suppress this monster." Having reached a decision, Qin Gang's head quickly retracted back into the ground as he prepared to retreat into the distance. However, just at this moment, a silly voice suddenly rang in his mind, "Since you're here, why are you leaving?" Just as it started speaking, the panda lying flat next to the fire attribute spirit stone mine suddenly kicked its legs and turned over. Immediately afterward it kicked the ground. With a deafening boom, successive waves of fire covered the earth, turning this place into a sea of flames in the blink of an eye. "My God!" Crying in surprise, a figure was shaken out of the ground. Perplexed, Qin Gang was utterly perplexed. He could not understand how his elementalization could be interrupted. At this moment, as he slowly raised his gaze, Qin Gang saw a chubby figure approaching him in unsteady steps. Qin Gang shook his head as if trying to clear his thoughts a bit. Then, the chubby figure sat down on the ground with a thud, kicking up a cloud of dust. "You?" Qin Gang slightly opened his mouth but was unable to say anything. He was left utterly speechless. Much to Qin Gang's astonishment, this panda happened to be wearing spike boots on its lower limbs and a symmetrical black cape over its shoulders. While it looked quite imposing, it appeared messy and out of place. As if sensing Qin Gang's gaze, the panda raised its spiky boots and proudly stated, These are shoes I imitated from humans. Don't they look nice? You should know that these boots are made from the hide of a transcendent creature, the black python. They are not only comfortable to wear but they also have incredible defense. Ah. Stunned for a moment, Qin Gang's face turned slightly stiff. After a while, Qin Gang's eyes widened, as if realizing something incredible. You can talk to me and also make clothes? Qin Gang stuttered, utterly dumbfounded. Are you kidding me? A panda that can talk and make clothes? How does that make sense? Had it been the mutant beasts of North Canyon, he could have accepted it. After all, those mutant beasts had received teachings from him and Thorn, the humans. Communication with them was naturally not difficult. However, in the wilderness, this was the first time he had encountered a mutant beast that actively communicated with him. What baffled him even more was that this mutant beast could even make clothes. Qin Gang's head was filled with confusion, he felt like he was going nuts. At this moment, apparently enjoying Qin Gang's reaction, the panda grinned and proudly proclaimed, "I'm a genius, you know?" Saying so, the panda added, seemingly showing off, "Back then I was served by a group of humans and ate the fresh bamboo sent by humans from thousands of kilometers away. The taste was indescribably delightful. And let me tell you, at that time, thousands of humans hunted me, but I still managed to escape. It made me laugh so hard that I was rolling on the floor. Those humans are so silly, so cute." Like a chatterbox who had not talked to anyone for a long time, the panda kept spouting words like a machine gun, leaving Qin Gang scratching his head, wondering if he was having a fever or an illusion. "What is it, are you feeling hot?" "Well, we're deep in the mountains and there is a fire attribute spirit stone mine nearby, so it's normal to feel hot." Saying that, the panda casually grabbed toward the fire attribute spirit stone mine behind its back. Crack. With a crisp sound, a large piece of sparkling red crystal fell into its paw. After a while, ignoring Qin Gang's astonishment, it opened its mouth and swallowed the fire attribute spirit stone. Crunch, crunch. A crisp sound of chewing filled the air as Panda patted its chest without minding Qin Gang's amazement. "It feels so good." Stretching out its mouth wide, yawning, a large burst of flames spewed from its mouth. At this moment, as if it had noticed Qin Gang's astonished expression again, the panda wiped its mouth and laughed heartily, stating, "Are you dumbfounded? This is the biggest secret of our panda tribe, it's never been revealed before." But before Qin Gang could react, the panda leaned close to Qin Gang's ear and whispered, "And the secret is that we pandas can consume minerals to become stronger. And I'm even more amazing, I can even eat spirit stones." Qin Gang's face turned a bit stiff as he glanced at the cute and silly-looking panda next to him and asked in amazement, "Didn't you say it's never been revealed?" "What revealed?" The panda blinked its eyes and stated, looking all surprised, Did I say something? Also, who are you? How did you get into my home? Do not think that wearing human skin I would not know you're a unique life form. Hurry, quickly come and tell me. Who are you? Why have you come to my place? What are your intentions?" Although it carried a hint of threat in its words, the panda's adorable appearance made Qin Gang almost burst into laughter. However, at this moment he seemed to realize that this panda was indeed a bit silly and cute. At least until now it had not shown any signs of hostility. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 205, Encounter with a giant lizard lounge. Is what you're saying true? Is there really a divine tree here? And its life essence is really as miraculous as you say? Can it really bring dead to life and regrow flesh from bones? Have you truly gathered tens of thousands of mutant beasts? One after another, the panda fired rapid questions. Curiosity and anticipation were quite apparent in the depths of the panda's eyes. But of course. With these words, Qin Gang reached out a hand toward the panda's shoulder. However, after a moment, when he realized that his whole arm could not even reach the beast's shoulder, the corner of his lips twitched slightly. Immediately after, he decisively activated his spiritual energy. In the bewildered gaze of the panda, Qin Gang's arm instantly swelled, turning into a massive arm encased in rock in an instant. Then, paying no heed to the panda's bewildered expression, Qin Gang his rock-covered arm on the beast's shoulder like a buddy and added, "There, you can meet my elder sister, Nine Tails, my second brother, Bull Demon, and even my silliest third brother, White Tiger." Wow, so many people. Stunned for a moment, the panda could not help but feel excited. He had been alone for far too long and was eager to encounter a group of beings with whom he could converse. Although humans were a decent choice, the panda was aware that, with his current appearance, humans would be terrified of him, and some might even try to kill him on sight. Things could not go back to how they used to be. In his present state, mankind would never serve him again like a master. But by the looks of it, he was about to connect with a group that could truly accept him. Grinning, the panda did not hesitate any longer. Despite his cute and silly appearance, he was not foolish by any means. He had long realized that Qin Gang intended to bring him somewhere. Let's go. Kicking the ground, the panda flipped over like a carp. Go where? Qin Gang was puzzled, still not fully comprehended what the panda was referring to. Of course, to the divine tree you mentioned, patting his chest, the panda confidently replied. As you said, the divine tree accepts everyone, seeks to establish a kingdom of monsters, and will definitely accept someone as outstanding as me. Pursing his lips, the panda revealed his signature, honey-like self-confident smile. Not long after, deep within Raya Mountains. Your earth escape technique is pretty impressive, praised Panda, who was carried out of the earth by Qin Gang. Qin Gang was taken aback. He then glanced at the panda beside him and asked tentatively, how did you manage to dig so deep into the ground to reach the fire attribute spirit stone mine? It's quite simple actually. I dug and I dug for half a day before I finally made it. While speaking, the panda gestured with his paws. Very smart. The corner of Qin Gang's lips twitched slightly, but a look of astonishment also flashed in his eyes. My God, I've really encountered a monster. He dug nearly a kilometer deep into the ground as if it was nothing. And he dug it in just half a day. He is truly a monster. Just at that moment, as if sensing something, the panda squinted his eyes slightly. Tsk, there are many unfamiliar auras. Unfamiliar auras? Slightly puzzled, after a moment, Qin Gang's expression changed slightly as he quickly added, they should be my companions. I see. Well then let's go take a look. Proposing this, the panda began to walk unsteadily in a particular direction. Meanwhile, in a corner of Raya Mountains. It was a bit damp and humid. A lake happened to be hidden here. Except, the vicinity of this enormous lake was filled with shrill cries. Hiss, 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 these were warnings carrying a bit of threats. Upon closer inspection, countless massive lizards, most of them about 2 to 3 meters long, and some even 7 to 8 meters long, came into view. Mutant lizards and a lounge of them. There are 2 very formidable auras here, murmured Sarcosuchus as he arrived in the vicinity and looked at the lake not far away, his eyes narrowing slightly. Could it be that a male and a female had given birth to so many lizards? A mischievous grin appeared on White Tiger's face as he voiced his speculation. It's quite possible. Sarcosuchus nodded, also agreeing with White Tiger's assessment. However, after a moment he glanced at the large group following him. Golden monkey, armored wild boar and honey badger. Sarcosuchus let out a long deep sigh. Let's go. This time we'll offer Lord Divine Tree 3 transcendence and these 2 as well. That'll be perfect. I'll follow your lead, fourth brother. Grinning, White Tiger had already lowered his body slightly. After a moment. Boom. As spiritual energy surged, a fearsome gust of wind lifted White Tiger's soft white fur. I'll go ahead. With a roar, White Tiger leaped into the air, flying over half a mountain, and pounced toward the lounge of lizards. Let's go. Sarcosuchus shook his head, attaching not much importance to White Tiger's impulsive action. For them, mutant beast, strength was everything. If they could resolve things with strength, they would not want to use their brains too much. Gruer? An inexplicable roar echoed through the forest as a colossal creature, about 40 to 50 meters long, strode forward with its stubby legs. Boom boom boom. Quaking the ground, Sarcosuchus was the first to charge toward the center of the lake, where 2 unfamiliar and powerful auras had awakened. After a moment, boom boom. Followed by 2 consecutive clashes, water splashed into the sky, reaching tens of meters high. White Tiger, who had rushed over, was blocked by a gigantic monster that had emerged from the lake. It was an enormous lizard covered in scales, and happened to be over 20 meters long. Its shiny jet-black scales seemed as if they were cast from black iron. They looked pretty hard and strong. And its pair of sharp claws gleaming in the sunlight looked quite terrifying. Hee, perfect timing. With a roar, White Tiger chose to ignore the enormous size of this giant transcendent lizard and fiercely clawed toward it. Has it been the size of fourth brother, I might have to be on guard, but this giant lizard? If you're going down. Coldly snorting in his heart, White Tiger fully mobilized the spiritual energy within him. Asterisk boom. Asterisk accompanied by a terrifying roar, spiritual energy wantonly shot into the sky as gusts of wind spread out in all directions. White Tiger's might? It constantly exudes a terrifying aura that can make ordinary beasts even lose the courage to resist. Even transcendents would have their strength reduced by about 10 to 20%. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 206, Stone Spear. Roar, roar, roar. One roar after another shook the sky as powerful mutant beasts roared out loud. This was a true battle. It was primitive, yet it perfectly depicted the beauty of violence. In the distance, White Tiger and a transcendent monitor lizard happened to be fighting to death. Even farther away, Sarcosuchus had pinned down another transcendent monitor lizard. In the face of Sarcosuchus' fearsome physique and enormous body, the transcendent monitor lizard was obviously not a match and hissed in pain incessantly. However, compared to the battles between these transcendents, the fights elsewhere were even more brutal. Golden Ant clenched his fists tightly. Asterisk boom. Asterisk accompanied by a deafening explosion, a monitor lizard was reduced to nothing by his powerful punch. On the other side, Honey Badger, transformed into a streak of lightning, darted through the ranks of monitor lizards. Asterisk zap. Asterisk electric arcs crackled around, leaving a burnt hole in the chest of one monitor lizard. Just then. Snort, snort, successive grunts echoed as a massive wild boar, 3 to 4 meters tall, and a body covered in black scales, was pawing the ground not far away. Golden Monkey, who was holding a wooden stick, had a slight change in his expression, as if realizing something. Then he leaped high into the air. The next moment. Bang bang, the ground started shaking as a black torrent swept toward the lounge of monitor lizards far away. The black torrent sent countless monitor lizards flying, some were even pierced through, creating a rain of blood. Barbaric Charge, a violent technique that the armored wild boar was known for. It was capable of tearing apart the entire battlefield. The only downside of this technique was that it did not discriminate between friend and foe. Even allies in his path would be torn apart by his tusks. Of course, compared to these exceptional fighters, other mutant beasts were not having it so easy. Hiss, hiss, hiss. One roar after another, monitor lizards opened their mouths wide. In moments, a fierce and highly toxic breath shot toward the storm wolves, like raindrops. The next moment, much to the mutant beast's horror, a storm wolf that was unable to react in time was dissolved into nothing. Yes, dissolved, and not a trace of it was left behind. This was the terrifying ability of the monitor lizards, toxic breath, which granted them the ability to spew a very deadly poison. Due to this ability, no other mutant beast dared to provoke them in Raya Mountains. In other words, the monitor lizard tribe ruled Raya Mountains. Aoo, with a long howl, most of the storm wolves, led by the alpha storm wolf's call, began to retreat, pulling back from the front lines. Once they had reached a safe corner, the storm wolves exchanged glances before they opened their jaws. Boom, boom, boom. The next moment, their spiritual energy started surging as a cluster of wind blades gathered in their mouths. Moments later, storms of wind blades shot forth from their mouths, heading straight for the lounge of monitor lizards. Although the storm wolf's breath attack was not as deadly as the monitor lizard's toxic breath, it was enough to disperse the toxic breath effectively. However, at this moment, screech, 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 sharp and piercing screeches suddenly echoed across the sky. Looking up, dozens of flying creatures had appeared in the sky at some point. They were circling around in the air as if waiting for something. Have we disturbed other mutant beasts? Muttered Sarcosuchus, his heart sinking slightly. Especially after feeling the presence of many unfamiliar beings around them, his expression changed even more. This was the most terrifying aspect of Raya Mountains. They could take care of a solitary herd of mutant beasts with their strength alone. Even a dominant colony like this lounge of monitor lizards was nothing to them. However, no matter how strong they were, they would be hard-pressed if they were attacked from all sides. Especially when a formidable enemy was lurking among them. Thinking about this, White Tiger and Sarcosuchus, who were separated by a fair distance, exchanged glances before looking toward the sky simultaneously. Deep within the clouds in that direction, both of them could sense a dreadful presence. In moments they caught sight of a majestic eagle. Its shiny jet-black wings cut through the clouds like cotton, and its gleaming eyes happened to be staring fixedly at the ground below. Just then, as if it had found an opportunity, the giant black eagle suddenly folded its wings and swooped straight toward the ground like an arrow fired from a bow. Boom. Star. A fearsome gale blew as its enormous shadow pierced through the clouds, heading directly for a listless massive monitor lizard in the lush forest. You want to die. At the sight of an oncoming mutant black eagle, Sarkosuke shouted and swung his tail backward without a second thought. Screech! With a piercing screech, the mutant black eagle's speed suddenly skyrocketed, even breaking through the sound barrier. Swoosh! A bolt of black lightning streaked across the air, brushing past Sarkosuke and heading straight for a nearby monitor lizard. However, before the transcendent monitor lizard could react, it suddenly flapped its wings violently. Boom! Suddenly, a burst of fearsome spiritual energy surged forth. In an instant, countless 2-meter-long wind blades shot toward the monitor lizard like a downpour. They were extremely fast, faster than anyone could imagine. And they filled the sky, leaving no room for evasion. In just a split second, the monitor lizard was hacked by countless wind blades, covering its entire body in numerous wounds, some so deep that the bone was visible. The next moment, a swooshing sound came from behind the transcendent black eagle, making it wary. The transcendent black eagle flapped its wings once again, shooting straight toward the monitor lizard before its talons dug fiercely into the monitor lizard's body. After a moment, under the reluctant gaze of Sarkosuke, the transcendent black eagle, carrying the transcendent monitor lizard, turned into a bolt of black lightning as it soared toward the sky blanketed in dark clouds. Screech, 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 a series of triumphant calls echoed. The giant black eagle seemed as happy as a child. For an existence like itself, catching a transcendent-level prey was an opportunity that rarely came by. Damn it! Sarkosuke roared in unwillingness, gazing up at the sky where the giant eagle had turned into a speck. An unimaginable blaze of fury surged within him. It was the very first time a transcendent mutant beast had dared to snatch a prey from his clutches. It was unforgivable, absolutely unforgivable. At this moment, Sarkosuke was like a powder keg about to explode with anger. However, just then, a deep voice suddenly rang in Sarkosuke's mind. Fourth brother, calm down. You can't escape. As his words fell, on a distant hilltop, Chingang slowly raised his right hand. The solid earth is my eternal companion, and the stone spear in my hand. Disappear, lowly thief. In the midst of this rather melodramatic proclamation, rich earth elements began to rise from the ground, gathering in Chingang's hand to form a sharp stone spear, measuring 3 meters in length. At the same time, the stone spear started slowly rotating, constantly gaining speed, creating a faint rustling sound of wind. The dense earth elements continued to gather until they outlined intricate patterns on the stone spear. After a moment, Chingang's eyes became focused. Go to hell. With a thunderous shout like a clap of thunder, the stone spear in Chingang's hand shot out like an arrow released from a bowstring. Boom. Star. With a loud and thunderous roar, the stone spear gave birth to an enormous storm visible to the naked eyes in the sky, as if it would pierce through the sky itself. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 207, Storm of Feathers. The mutant black eagle seemed to have sensed the storm approaching from behind. The mutant black eagle promptly turned its head, and what it saw next caused its pupils to fiercely contract. Fast, too fast, faster than it could have imagined. Screech, a sharp and piercing reverberated through the sky as the mutant black eagle zooming toward the cloud abruptly stopped. Immediately afterward, it changed direction as its gleaming eyes immediately focused. Screech, another high-pitched, piercing cry rang through the sky with a fearsome burst of spiritual energy surging around it. In a moment, a storm no less stronger than the one generated by the stone spear emerged in front of it. Boom. 2 mighty storms collided hundreds of meters high in the sky, blowing the nearby clouds in all directions like waves in the sea. What was even more terrifying was that the fearsome gusts of winds caused by the clash descended upon the lush green forest and uprooted countless trees. However, amidst this astonishing spectacle, the mutant black eagle near the vortex suddenly shook as the monitor lizard in its claws fell from the sky. Screech, anxious, the giant black eagle instinctively wanted to fly toward the monitor lizard. But as fast as it was, there were figures several times faster than it. Asterisk swoosh swoosh swoosh. Like black streaks of light, the peregrine falcons that had long been lurking in the depths of the clouds dove down. Blessed with innate talent, bullet dive, their speed increased more and more, until they broke through the sound barrier and tore through the clouds. In a moment, much to the giant black eagle's incredulity, several Tier 0 flying creatures carried away its prey toward the horizon. Screech, a screech of rage reverberated through the skies. The uncontrollable anger completely took over the giant black eagle. Boom, it immediately spread its several meters wide wings, giving birth to a fearsome gale. Its imposing manner was much stronger than those self-proclaimed rulers of sky among humans. There was no telling how many times stronger it was. At this moment, looking at the distant peregrine falcons taking away the prey, the panda cast an astonished glance at Qin Gang, who had prevented him from taking action. "Why didn't you let me take action? I could have hit it just now," dissatisfied, the panda complained. "Rest assured, this black eagle won't get away." Patting the panda's shoulder, Qin Gang inquired again, "And can you guarantee that if you take action, you can capture this black eagle?" "Ah." After some thought, a look of hesitation appeared on the panda's face as he responded, "It would have been a bit difficult. After all, it's the ruler of the sky. Although I can crush it with one punch, I can't do anything if it wants to escape." "That's right." With a grin, Qin Gang glanced at the giant black eagle, which was flying away after the peregrine falcons, and stated, not bothering to hide his sneer, "We'll see it later." "See it later?" puzzled, the panda asked. "Hee, didn't I tell you? We are protected by a divine tree. Now, the direction in which this black eagle is flying is the divine tree's territory. When you're in the territory of the divine tree, whether it's flying creatures or four-legged animals, they all have to be cautious of their actions. They don't have any other choice." Listening to Qin Gang, the panda asked in a doubtful manner, pouting, "Is it really that powerful?" "Of course." With a hearty laugh, Qin Gang patted the panda's shoulder before heading toward Misty Mountains. Meanwhile, deep within North Canyon, Wuxia suddenly turned his gaze to the sky as if sensing something. In a moment, an enormous storm caught his eye. And within the storm, several peregrine falcons happened to be gripping the body of a monitor lizard, struggling to fly in this direction. However, their bodies were so small that from this distance, it looked like a monitor lizard was flying over. Did they bring back another transcendent prey? Wuxia smiled as excitement filled him. Whether a transcendent mutant beast would be added to his ranks or harvested for evolution points, both were good news. However, transcendent mutant beasts were mostly unruly, making it challenging to subdue them. Just like the mutant hedgehog deep within North Canyon, who remained untamed despite Wuxia's best methods. But it didn't matter, time was on his side. Even if he could not subdue it, he could still harvest it for evolution points. Moreover, it was worth mentioning that the body of a transcendent mutant beast contained a considerable amount of energy, enough to elevate some Tier 0 mutant beasts to higher levels. If used wisely, it could be used to cultivate other many powerful mutant beasts. However, just at this moment, Wuxia squinted his eyes, seemingly sensing something. Looking up into the distance, he saw another towering storm approaching. This storm was even more rampant and carried an overwhelming aura. Screech, a sharp piercing cry reverberated through the sky, so sharp it seemed as if it would tear through the heavens. The giant black eagle rapidly descended, extending its sharp talons toward the transcendent monitor lizard. "Does it not take me seriously?" Wuxia sneered coldly. The giant black eagle not only dared to enter his territory but also attacked his peregrine falcons right in front of him. "You must die." Coldly smiling, Wuxia's spiritual energy started surging. In a moment, countless willow leaves trembled. Then these willow leaves slowly rose into the air and in the blink of an eye, transformed into countless razor-sharp blades. Flying willow leaf blades? Wuxia could transform the willow leaves into flying blades that could decapitate anyone from thousands of miles away? This was a terrifying ability, especially after being tempered and nurtured in Wuxia's tree heart. The two willow leaves contained astonishing power. However, for this Tier 1 mutant eagle that had dared to enter his territory, regular willow leaves were more than enough. "Die!" As Wuxia murmured, hundreds of willow leaves suddenly trembled and then accelerated. They turned into a rain of thousands of arrows, heading straight for the giant black eagle in the sky. Screech! The eagle let out a cry as its instincts sensed the danger. In a moment, it raised its head and saw countless glowing willow leaves shooting toward it. However, what made the giant black eagle's pupils contract was that these willow leaves were too fast and too sharp. In the blink of an eye they had closed the distance and were right in front of it. Screech! It let out another piercing cry as its countless feathers stood on their end, shining like metal. The next moment, it flapped its wings as countless feathers rained down. Asterisk boom boom boom, the eagle's feathers and willow leaves clashed with each other again and again as sparks flew everywhere. For a moment the sky was filled with sparks flying everywhere. But much to the giant black eagle's terror, the willow leaves that had already been struck down by its feathers actually turned around and came shooting toward it once again. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 208, Ling Air's Request. Asterisk schlick, schlick, tearing through the storm of feathers, countless leaves shot straight toward the giant black eagle in succession. Before it could react, the giant black eagle was struck by countless willow leaves. Asterisk screech. Asterisk the giant black eagle, covered in blood, let out a painful screech. While these were just ordinary willow leaves and had been shot from tens of kilometers, given Wuxia's current power, their might was not to be underestimated. However, this was not the end. While the giant black eagle was enduring the rain of countless willow leaves, a root as thick as a water bucket arrived underneath it, below the ground. The next moment, the root, surging with spiritual energy, suddenly broke through the soil and shot straight up into the sky. From the distance, it looked like an enormous python rising from the ground. Facing Wuxia's premeditated root, not to mention the giant black eagle in its present state, when it was already having difficulty dealing with the willow leaves, it would have been extremely difficult for it to resist even in its heyday. However, better safe than sorry. In order to prevent the giant black eagle from escaping, Wuxia had intentionally diverted its attention using the flying willow leaf blade. At this moment, the towering tree root had already arrived near the giant black eagle. By the time the giant black eagle finally reacted, numerous fine rootlets suddenly shot out from the thick black root. These rootlets quickly enveloped the giant black eagle like a net. In a flash, amidst the black eagle's painful screeches, it was bound by countless rootlets. Then, before the giant black eagle could respond, Wuxia fiercely pulled the root down. Immediately after, with a deafening boom, the ground shook as a rift extended along the earth, heading straight toward the canyon. Wuxia did not pay too much attention to these transcendent creatures. Mutant beasts had strong vitality and would not easily die. It was especially true for the transcendent giant eagle like this. Dragging it on the ground for tens of kilometers would not kill it, instead it would only dull its edge. Perfect. Mischievously smiling, Wuxia accelerated the route once again. Along the way, countless trees were knocked down and the rift was stained red with blood. Several minutes later, the giant black eagle had been dragged back to the canyon by the root. However, it no longer looked as majestic as before. Its feathers were disheveled and covered in dust, and its entire body was stained with an indelible dark blood color. At this moment, as if sensing something, screech, screech, crying out in intense rage, the giant black eagle looked toward the depths of the clouds of mist, where a towering tree stood. In my territory, even if you're a tiger, you must prostrate before me, even if you're a dragon, you must coil before me. With a light chuckle, Wuxia swung a branch. The next moment, with a resounding smack, the giant black eagle fiercely trembled as a blood-red mark appeared on its body. It didn't make a single sound even after getting lashed by my branch. It seems like its willpower is quite strong. With a touch of appreciation, a satisfied look appeared on Wuxia's face. By the looks of it, another formidable member was going to be joining his team. As for why Wuxia was so confident he could tame the giant transcendent eagle, it was quite simple. In over thousands of years of history, humans had developed a well-established system to tame eagles. While Wuxia himself might not know them, he could arrange for Ling Air to learn them. Once Ling Air learned these techniques and applied them to this giant transcendent eagle, it would most likely yield results quickly. Thinking of this, Wuxia slightly narrowed his eyes as a series of information flooded into Wuxia's mind. Race, mutant eagle. Rank, Tier 1 transcendent. Innate talent, tempestuous might. Every time it flaps its wings, it creates a powerful storm. It's a powerful bird that can truly control storms. Unique abilities, arrows of feathers. It can manipulate its own feathers, which are as sharp as blades, and shoot them at extreme speeds like a rain. Sharp talons. Its talons are as hard as metal and can tear through anything. Scales of feathers. The feathers covering its entire body were extremely hard and strong. They can reduce the incoming damage by 40%. Compared to other transcendent creatures, the abilities of the giant black eagle were relatively straightforward. Nonetheless, this simplicity made Wuxia narrow his eyes slightly. Sometimes, simplicity did not mean worthlessness. On the contrary, it represented a kind of true terror. Just like this giant mutant eagle which could navigate in and out of the horde of beasts, taking on 7 or more opponents at once, relying on its terrifying innate talent, the tempestuous might combined with its ability scales of feathers with the help of which it could reduce incoming damage by 40%. Not every mutant creature needed to have many abilities. Those with limited energy would find it hard to master them all. Creatures like this giant eagle with just a few simple abilities would reveal their true power when they had completely mastered them. Of course, it was just plain unlucky for a ruler of the sky to run into Sarcosuchus, Chingang, and now Wuxia in succession. To survive through all that was already quite a testament to its strength. At this moment, tap, 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 followed by light footsteps, a young girl with shiny black hair who had just finished bathing, walked out from the dense mist. Wow, what's this? With a touch of surprise, Ling Er looked at the giant black eagle, which was tightly bound by numerous tree roots not far away, her eyes lighting up. This is a giant transcendent eagle. It's quite strong and was just captured by me, explained Wuxia, smiling. At this moment, as if she had thought of something, Ling Er suddenly rushed over, rubbed against Wuxia's tree trunk and asked with a smile, "Master, can you give it to me?" Ah. Momentarily stunned, Wuxia could not help but ask with curiosity, "Back then you didn't want 9 tails to follow you. Why do you want this giant black eagle today?" Hee hee. With a playful smile, Ling Er also explained, "This transcendent eagle can carry me into the sky, flying through the clouds. More importantly, it's so majestic. When I return to the human world, I can make a big entrance on this transcendent eagle and leave everyone in awe." Ling Er's explanation left Wuxia speechless. However, after giving it a thought, riding on a giant eagle would indeed look pretty majestic. Thinking this, Wuxia agreed with a nod, "If you can tame it, then go ahead and take it." He had always felt indebted to Ling Er, or more accurately to Qing Er. Now, if he could make amends with this transcendent giant eagle, that would be best. After receiving Wuxia's permission, Ling Er's smile became even more radiant. She tiptoed and like a gentle breeze toward the giant transcendent eagle. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 209, Return and the Arrival of the Strong. Tonight, North Canyon was exceptionally bustling. First, a transcendent spider arrived, followed by a pair of critically injured and dying transcendent monitor lizards. And as if that was not enough, a supreme ruler of the sky, a giant mutant eagle, was captured. Of course, the gains did not end there. When looking toward the depths of the mist, one could see groups of mutant beasts arriving one after another. Leading the pack was Sarcosuchus, White Tiger, Golden Ant, and Thorns of the 9 Great Beasts. Right behind them were the 3 generals, Honey Badger, Armored Wild Boar and Golden Monkey. Finally, in the rear, there were a pack of storm wolves and a herd of wild boars. More importantly, these storm wolves and wild boars happened to be carrying prey with them. Among the preys, the mutant monitor lizards were the most. Moreover, Wuxia also noticed an unfamiliar aura of a transcendent hidden within the groups of beasts. A pair of male and female transcendent monitor lizards? Wuxia smiled to himself, quite satisfied with the harvest. It had far exceeded his previous expectations. Just in terms of evolution points, these were at least comparable 40,000 evolution points. After all, each Tier 1 transcendent could provide evolution points in the 5 digits. Not to mention the fact that these Tier 1 transcendent creatures were among the most powerful ones, capable of providing tens of thousands of evolution points. While evolution points were not equivalent to spiritual energy, the fact was that the more profound one's spiritual energy was, the more evolution points they provided. This was beyond doubt because, after all, according to Wuxia's conjecture, the process of acquiring evolution points involves a power akin to the quintessence of life. Therefore, the stronger one was, the more concentrated their strength was. At this moment, Wuxia suddenly exclaimed as if sensing something. Immediately afterward, he turned his gaze toward a distant corner of Misty Mountains, where 2 figures were slowly approaching. One figure was self-evident. It was exuding a powerful aura of earth element, as if it were the incarnation of the very earth itself. With each step, unusual ripples on the ground as if the earth was cheering. However, the other figure made Wuxia narrow his eyes. It was burning, fiercely burning like a blazing fireball with an unimaginable heat. What was even more terrifying was that even after being repeatedly suppressed, its overwhelming spiritual energy fluctuations could not completely conceal it. 100,000, maybe 200,000, or even 300,000. Yuziyu made a guess, feeling curious. Much to his surprise, there happened to be a Tier 2 transcendent lurking in his vicinity. What surprised him even more was that the Tier 2 transcendent did not show any hostility toward him. Instead, it came alongside Qin Gang. Oh. Intrigued, Yuziyu's consciousness slowly shifted to a tree root not far from them. After a moment, boom, 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 the ground slightly shook as a massive tree root as thick as an arm broke through the soil and climbed up a tree as thick as several humans combined. What caught Yuziyu's eye was a big, fat black and white bear walking upright. No, to be more precise, it should be the national animal of China, a panda. However, unlike regular pandas, this one happened to be wearing black leather boots and draping a black cloak over its shoulders. Also, it wore a bamboo hat on its head which was concealing its face. What the? Yuziyu was a bit stunned, unable to make heads or tails of it. This scene was quite strange no matter how you looked at it. Just at that moment, as if sensing Yuziyu's presence, the fat panda suddenly stopped in its tracks. What's wrong? Qin Gang, wearing a look of curiosity, gazed at the panda as it stopped. Someone's here, replied the panda with a grin. He swallowed the spirit fruit in his hand and scanned his surroundings. After a while, he adjusted the bamboo hat on his head as his gaze became slightly focused. Lord Divine Tree, since you're here, why bother hiding? Saying this, the panda's gaze locked onto a large tree not far away, that was as wide as several humans combined. The next moment, a root as thick as an arm, resembling a black snake, slowly surged out from this massive tree and fixed its gaze on the panda. Nice to meet you. I am the Lord of the Mist. You can call me Ziyu. Yuziyu introduced himself, showing his due respect to the strong. Although the panda was not strong enough to shake the current Yuziyu, the fact it managed to get ahead of countless mutant beasts and become a Tier 2 transcendent was worthy of praise. Not to mention, it had the courage to follow Qin Gang out of his trust in Yuziyu. Thus, Yuziyu naturally treated the panda with respect. This was his way of welcoming guests. Ziyu? The panda was slightly stunned before its eyes lit up. Is this a name you gave yourself? No wonder this big guy says you can speak the language of humans and understand everything. At this point, the panda suddenly pursed his lips and asked with a stupid grin, regarding my own name, what do you think I should choose? Although I know some human things, I've been having a hard time coming up with a good name even until now. Yuziyu was a bit stunned and looked at the silly-looking but exceptionally intelligent panda. Yuziyu was a bit confused. The panda's act of dressing like a human hermit had already left him surprised. Much to his surprise, the panda spoke so clearly and wished for a name. This was more than just intelligence. If it were not for the fact that the panda still looked like a panda at this moment, Yuziyu would have doubted whether it was a human or not. However, after giving it a thought, Yuziyu understood a little. In this era of transcendence, everyone and everything was evolving not just physically but also mentally, more or less. For instance, Tier 0 beasts possessed an intelligence comparable to 3 to 4 years old kids, and with some training, they would not be that much inferior to ordinary humans. As for transcendent creatures, they were practically on par with humans. Such a phenomenon could explain why the panda looked like a human dressed in panda skin. Considering its brain domain development, it was not inferior to humans by much, it might even be better than an average human. If it had extensive interaction with humans, it could even learn some human culture. Yuziyu reckoned that it might have come from the human side. He further believed that it might be the same one Qing'er had mentioned back then. After all, at the beginning of the resurgence of spiritual energy, a panda had escaped from China's captivity. This incident had caused China to mobilize thousands of soldiers, but they still failed to find it. It had stirred up quite a storm. Several high-ranking officials were removed from their positions due to their incompetence. Thinking about this, Yuziyu tentatively asked, could it be that you are that panda that humans had pursued so vehemently? Human pursuit? The panda pondered for a moment before getting startled. Then, as if remembering something, a smug expression appeared on his face. You know about that too? Did the big guy tell you? Wait, that's not right, he's been with me the whole time. It seems like you're quite well informed. With another cheeky grin, the panda scratched the back of his head, embarrassed, but his words were filled with pride. Clearly this was something he was proud of. After all, when he had just advanced, escaping from the grasp of thousands of fully armed soldiers was no small feat, yet he managed to pull it off. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 210, Divine Power and Grand Fireball. Boom, 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 the earth shook as two thick roots emerged from the ground. After a moment, these two roots landed not far from the panda and Qin Gang. Come up. As for the name, I'll think of a name for you later, stated Yuziyu as his root shook a little, gesturing to get on. Carrying the passengers on his route was quite an efficient method. At least, Yuziyu had already planned to carry people on routes to receive very esteemed guests. However, Qin Gang looked at the two nearby routes and decisively shook his head. Thank you, Lord Divine Tree, but I'll walk by myself. Saying so, Qin Gang glanced at the hesitant panda and quickly added, since it's Lord Divine Tree's invitation, you should take it. Trust me, you'll experience something really different. Experience something different? The panda was slightly stunned and a little intrigued as well. But at this moment, another root emerged from the ground. The very next moment, it shot out from beneath his feet. Let's go. Yuziyu let out a hearty laughter before his consciousness returned to the heart of North Canyon. Meanwhile, in the distance, the panda was tightly holding onto the root. Howling winds ruffled his fur, while the ever-changing scenery receded into the distance. This route was carrying him toward North Canyon at a very astonishing speed. What left the panda even more dumbfounded was that, while maintaining such high speed, the route was gradually ascending. Before long, it disappeared into the clouds. The entire sight looked like a swordsman flying on the sword. This is so thrilling. The panda gulped hard as he gazed down at the forest shrouded in mist below, a surge of excitement surging within him. He could not help but admit that this was indeed a different experience. Now, through the clouds, looking at the excited panda in the night sky, Yuziyu could not help but secretly praise in his heart, chuckling, this guy is not bad. Saying so, Yuziyu's gaze shifted to the root carrying the panda. If hundreds or thousands of roots soared into the night sky carrying mutant beasts, that would be quite a spectacular sight. It would look like hundreds and thousands of sword immortals flying through the clouds. Except, the spectacle Yuziyu was picturing would be far more terrifying. After all, the countless roots rising from the ground would resemble a waterfall, one that was continuously ascending higher and higher, and getting faster and faster. It would not only be spectacular but will also terrify most of our enemies, I assume. With these strange thoughts, Yuziyu shifted his gaze toward the nearby Ling Heir, who was still trying to tame the giant black eagle. Ling Heir, we are having a guest, prepare to receive him. Guest? Ling Heir was slightly surprised, but without a single moment of delay, she turned around and headed straight for Yuziyu's main body. Although she had not hosted guests in North Canyon before, having spent many years in the human world, she still understood the basic etiquettes. As such, she had already picked some spirit flowers and spirit fruits, and even fetched a bowl of water from the spirit pond. At this moment, witnessing Ling Heir's preparations, Yuziyu felt it necessary to remind her that the guest liked to eat bamboo. However, after giving it another thought, he decided against it. While Misty Mountains was vast, there were no bamboo groves. Another day he could consider planting a bamboo forest for the panda, and not just any bamboo but high-quality spirit bamboo. After all, a Tier 2 transcendent was joining them. Just the thought of it made Yuziyu filled with anticipation. Not long after, within the stunned gazes of various mutant beasts, a towering root split the clouds, heading straight for North Canyon. Wait a minute, is that someone on it? Exclaiming, White Tiger leaped to a high vantage point. After a moment, a stout and chubby panda entered his sight. Huh? White Tiger was filled with doubt, unable to immediately identify the species. That's a panda, the national animal of China. It's famous for its cuteness, explained Thorns, which she rarely did as she slowly emerged from the depths of the forest. Except, a strange expression involuntarily took over her face. How can a panda appear here? It should be noted that while there were many pandas having a population in 4 digits, they had always been under China's strict control. Especially after the resurgence of spiritual energy, pandas had become a top-secret matter for China and were not known to outsiders. And it was reasonable too. After all, it was impossible for China to release a mutant beast such as panda, which looked very adorable but was actually a formidable beast, into the wild. More importantly, this panda looked terrifying. Meanwhile, high above the clouds. Is this North Canyon that big guy was talking about? Aha. Yuzu slightly nodded, and before he could speak, the panda pursed his lips into a wide grin before laughing uproariously, saying, "Then I'll go down first." Saying so, his body contracted as he turned into a round and plump ball. The next moment, the panda fell toward North Canyon like a shooting star. However, flames started flickering around his body as if his body was rubbing against the air. And as he descended further and further, the flames on his body grew more and more intense. In the blink of an eye, his entire body transformed into a hot ball of fire. "Look at me, great fireball." With a hearty laugh, his spiritual energy started surging. Under the stunned gazes of various mutant beasts, the sky was engulfed in flames. And amidst this swathe of flames was a fireball akin to a sun, but much more terrible. Rumble! In just a moment, the fireball had expanded to half the size of North Canyon itself, and along with it, the temperature of the canyon soared rapidly. However, at this moment, a cry suddenly came from the sky. Hey, I can't control it. Run quickly." The panda's voice carried a hint of nervousness. There was also a baffled look on his face. Who could explain to him why his body temperature was rising as he descended at high speed, to such an extent that even the spiritual energy within him was raging like a storm? No, it was not that the spiritual energy had gone rampant. Instead, it was because he had consumed too many fire tribute spirit stones, and his body was filled with an excessive amount of fire tribute spiritual energy. Fire attribute spiritual energy was naturally violent, and with the current stimulation, it had completely spiraled out of control. Feeling frustrated, the panda now realized that it had made a big mistake. With the momentum it had generated, if it were to crash down, the entire North Canyon would be razed to the ground. It might even destroy a large portion of Misty Mountains. "I think it might not be a bad idea to send you in future battles like this." A faint chuckle rang in the panda's mind, taking him aback. The next moment, the panda saw the mist part ways, revealing a towering tree. At this moment, this towering tree was glittering like a crystal, as if it were adorned with starlight. Suddenly, vast and abundant spiritual energy surged. Advent of the Tree World. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 211, The Terrifying Panda. Advent of the Tree World. A shout reverberated through the sky. Immediately, the entire canyon quaked. Boom, 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 accompanied by a terrifying roar. Tree trunks as thick as buckets burst forth from the ground. However, what was truly astonishing was that it was not just one or two trees but thousands upon thousands. The deafening noise kept going to no end, and so did the quakes. At this moment, it seemed as if the very earth was unable to bear the weight as vast swathes of land cracked and collapsed. At the same time, the trees turned into a vast and rising green torrent, rushing toward the sky. From a distance, it resembled an azure dragon soaring into the sky, giving the impression as if it could sweep through the worlds. And at this point, the huge fireball in the sky had also arrived. The next moment, a deafening roar reverberated across the sky, causing everything to fall silent. Time seemed to have frozen in that instant. In the astounded gazes of countless mutant beasts, two enormous shockwaves, one red and one green, streaked across the sky. In a flash, even the thick mist shrouding North Canyon was dissipated by the resulting winds and shockwaves. Only the trees and the fireball seemed to be frozen in the sky. However, at this moment, a light chuckle suddenly rang in the dumbfounded panda's ears. "Is this all you've got?" The next moment, with a playful expression, Yuzu's spiritual energy surged. Then, much to the panda's disbelief, the endless torrent of trees slowly took the shape of a mouth. Bit by bit. Little by little. It swallowed not only the panda but the entire fireball. Before the panda could mount any response, a terrifying suction force emanated from all around him. Boom. Accompanied by a deafening roar, the raging and blazing flames swirling around the panda were completely extinguished. At the same time, the panda also felt his own spiritual energy weaken. It was as if he was being slowly devoured by an invisible force. But the very next moment, before the panda could react, he was thrown out, who crashed on the ground with a deafening boom. At the same time, a cute and chubby black and white bear entered the eyes of many mutant beasts. Did this chubby cutie stir up such a commotion? Are you kidding me? Disbelief filled the air, even White Tiger was taken aback. However, before he could say anything more, a gentle voice suddenly echoed in the air, "Let's welcome the first Tier 2 transcendent guest of North Canyon." As the words fell, countless mutant beasts were momentarily taken aback. Tier 2 transcendent? Huh. The mutant beasts exchanged glances with each other. Many found it hard to accept that this chubby, adorable little fellow was a Tier 2 transcendent. Right at this moment, the panda stood up from the ground and shook off the dust from his body. When he noticed that many mutant beasts were in disbelief, a trace of amusement flashed in his eyes. After a moment, accompanied by a deafening roar, a terrifying burst of spiritual energy suddenly erupted from him as his black and white fur bristled along with the surge. For a moment, an oppressing pressure came bearing down on the entire North Canyon. It was quite a terrifying pressure. The indescribable oppression could not be conveyed in words alone. At this moment, Wuxia focused his gaze toward the panda slightly, before a series of information flooded into his mind one after another. Race, panda. Innate talent, devourer, it can continuously strengthen its own body by consuming minerals. And those with exceptional talents can directly devour spirit stones, stealing their essence. Unique abilities, fire breath, endless fire attribute spiritual energy is surging within its body, so much so that even its breath can create a wave of heat that engulfs its enemies. Immense strength, it possesses strength to crush anything, even mutant beasts with strong defenses cannot withstand it. Fire resistance, long-term consumption of fire attribute spirit stones had made it significantly immune to fire element attacks. Petrification, long-term consumption of minerals have granted it to make its body hard like stone, creating a rock-hard armor, which can resist most earth element attacks. Grand Fireball, it's able to channel the power of flames within its body to transform into a scorching ball of fire that devours anything and everything. After examining the panda's status screen with scrutiny, Wuxia could not help but fall silent. One could only say that he truly lived up to being a Tier 2 transcendent mutant beast. His terrifying abilities far exceeded those of ordinary mutant beasts. Leaving aside the rest, just his innate talent, Devourer, and his additional ability spoke volumes. The ability to gain resistance and even immunity by continuously consuming a certain substance was terrifying in itself. In other words, if the panda devoured large quantities of spirit stones of different attributes, he could gain immunity to most elemental attacks. If the panda was fortunate enough to find rare spirit stones of light, darkness, lightning and other attributes, he could achieve true elemental immunity. At that time this fellow would become a true monster. Even if he just stood in his place, most mutant beasts would find it difficult to harm him. Not to mention his innate talent, Devourer, which enhanced the panda's physical defense by consuming minerals. Wuxia felt like he had just seen an indestructible monster. No, not indestructible. But a monster whose defense could not even be breached. And this was without considering whether this panda would evolve any recovery abilities in the future during his long evolution. If he developed such an ability, and even more luckily acquired a life-saving ability during evolution. It could even be said that a tank among tanks and a meat shield among meat shields was about to be born. What was even more terrifying was that this monster with invincible defense also possessed astonishing destructive power. Thinking of this, Wuxia could not help but remember the spectacle created by the panda when he unleashed the Grand Fireball just now. Just with fire attribute spiritual energy, he's able to manifest such a terrifying ability as the Grand Fireball. If he integrates spiritual energies of multiple attributes, his strength. Smacking his lips, Wuxia's gaze toward the panda became a bit fiery. A powerful creature like him could not be allowed to escape. His potential was more than just terrifying. If he had a good opportunity, he might even have a chance to grow to a point where even Wuxia had to be wary of him. And this was by no means an exaggeration. It was all because, on this peculiar panda, Wuxia saw a potential that could be called fearsome. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 212, the Ninth Beast, Brewmaster. At this moment, seemingly aware of Wuxia's scrutinizing gaze, the panda suddenly turned his head and grinned, asking, "Divine Tree, have you thought of a name for me?" "A name, huh?" Wuxia then smiled and nodded. "What is it?" the panda asked with a hint of surprise, looking a bit excited. "Do you enjoy drinking alcohol?" Wuxia threw another question and did not give a direct answer. "Drink alcohol?" The panda was momentarily taken aback and a little puzzled. But after a moment, as if he had realized something, The panda's eyes lit up with excitement. Are you talking about the alcohol of humans? No. Yuziyu shook his head slightly, a sly smile forming on his lips. He then looked towards a nearby golden monkey and said, "Fetch some monkey wine for the panda." "Yes, Lord Divine Tree." Pursing his lips into a smile, the golden monkey immediately dashed towards the depths of Misty Mountains. As for the monkey wine, it was something Golden Monkey had found by chance when he tamed a group of monkeys. Legend had it that the monkeys stored all kinds of fruits in a hole, initially intending to store them for the winter. However, when there was no shortage of food in the winter, the monkeys forgot that they ever stored fruit in the hole, and then the fruits gradually fermented over time, turning into monkey wine. Such a naturally brewed wine was a stroke of luck. Moreover, due to the resurgence of spiritual energy and the abundance of spirit flowers and fruits, the monkey wine was particularly precious. The spiritual energy in it was no less than a huge opportunity for ordinary mutant beasts. However, this kind of fine wine was not suitable for Tier 0 mutant beasts. Even Golden Monkey took a sip of it only once in a while. In fact, even the panda needed to be cautious because of the abundance of spirit fruits in the monkey wine. With so many spirit fruits in the wine, it was a great test on the drinker's body. Yet, it was perfect for entertaining the panda. Furthermore, based on Yuziyu's speculation, the panda had been devouring fire attribute spirit stones for a long time, which had made his spiritual energy excessively violent and unstable. So, cleansing it with strong alcohol like monkey wine might be beneficial for his condition. Much to the panda's eager anticipation, Golden Monkey returned with a sealed stone jar in no time. "Is this the monkey wine?" the panda asked in surprise as he sniffed the air. After careful consideration, the panda's eyes widened in astonishment. This rich fragrance. Taken aback, the panda ran and took the stone jar from Golden Monkey's hands before opening it without a moment of hesitation. However, this was a grave mistake. The moment the jar was opened, it caused a great uproar among the mutant beasts in the entire canyon as a rich aroma of wine spread. The less powerful mutant beasts, such as the storm wolves, had their faces turned red with intoxication. "Step back," a voice echoed in their ears. Hearing the voice of the divine tree, the storm wolves quickly retreated towards the exit of the canyon. However, if one observed their steps carefully, they seemed a bit unsteady. Clearly, the monkey wine's aroma alone had intoxicated a large group of mutant beasts. Meanwhile, great wine, peals of laughter rang through the canyon. In the heart of North Canyon, a panda was swaying back and forth, hugging the stone jar. Eventually, it slumped down on the ground. As Yuziyu observed the flushed face of the panda, he could not help but wonder just how much he had drunk. At that moment, as if he had sensed Yuziyu's gaze, the panda suddenly raised his head and stated, "Lord Divine Tree, I like it, I really like it, I feel like I've fallen in love with this taste." Saying so, the panda once again lifted the stone jar. As the crystal-clear liquid poured into his mouth, the aroma of the wine filled the canyon. Gulp in the distance, watching the panda drinking the monkey wine heartily, White Tiger could not help but swallow saliva, a look of amazement on his face. While others might not know, he was well aware of the effects of the wine. When Golden Monkey first harvested the monkey wine, he had taken just a sip, a small sip. But just after taking that sup, he felt dizzy and could not even walk steadily. Now, as he watched the panda drinking the monkey wine so freely, White Tiger felt like the panda was drinking fake monkey wine. At this moment, as if he had sensed White Tiger's doubtful gaze, the nearby Golden Monkey suddenly threw a gourd at him. "Third brother, I've saved a sip for you." "Good job." With a loud laugh, the White Tiger bit into the gourd. In a moment, the fiery hot liquor flowed down his throat, searing his throat. Roar, roar, roar. The next moment, White Tiger started roaring in pain, rolling on the ground, stimulated by the spiciness of the monkey wine. So hot, so hot. White Tiger cried in pain, almost in tears. "Itcha." Sighing, a helpless look appeared on Golden Monkey's face. Indeed, as Lord Divine Tree had said, most people could not enjoy this fine wine. Only those with innate talent like extreme absorption, and bodies like the panda could withstand the hotness of monkey wine and then savor its delicious fragrance. Watching the panda joyfully drinking, Yuziyu could not help but smile. Just as he had expected, the panda loved monkey wine. Firstly, monkey wine was quite an exquisite wine, and if one could withstand its spiciness, it would undoubtedly become irresistible to the naturally greedy panda. The second reason was the panda itself. Having consumed fire attribute spirit stones for a long time, his body was already filled with extremely violent fire attribute spiritual energy. Normally it might not have been that apparent, but during his recent explosive display of power, especially when he unleashed the massive fireball, it was evident. The panda was now finding it difficult to control his own rampaging spiritual energy. And monkey wine happened to neutralize the rampant spiritual energy within the panda's body, allowing him to refine his body further. The benefits were self-evident. Rather than saying that Wuxia knew the panda liked monkey wine, it was more accurate to say that he could see that the panda's body required monkey wine. Thinking of this, Wuxia looked at the plump figure not far away and smiled, saying, "Now, can I ask you again, do you like to drink alcohol?" "I like it, I love it," the panda responded excitedly. In his enthusiastic response, the panda used his claws to wipe the glistening drops of wine from the corners of his mouth. Then, with reluctance, he licked the paw that had touched the wine before stating, "Lord Divine Tree, I have not come to the wrong place. I did not expect to find such delicious wine here. If I had known, I would have come earlier." Wuxia chuckled before he changed the topic and stated, "Since you like to drink, how about I call you the brewmaster from now on?" Brewmaster. The panda was at a loss for words, slightly puzzled. The finest wine experts in the world are called brewmasters. Since you enjoy drinking in the future, the difference between you and these top-notch wine experts should not be too far. So, the name brewmaster should be suitable for you, Wuxia explained. Okay. The panda repeatedly nodded as a tinge of excitement filled his face. He liked this name very much. Or, to be more accurate, he had already fallen in love with the word brew. With that in mind, the panda got up from the ground and looked around at the many mutant beasts. "In the future, I will be called Brewmaster. Don't forget." Saying this, the panda looked back at Wuxia and laughed. "Lord Divine Tree, I heard from the big guy that the highest status among you is the 9 great beasts. I wonder if there's any hope for me." Wuxia was at a loss for words for a moment, the corners of his mouth twitching slightly. Actually, he had regarded the panda as an ally, someone with a similar status. On the other hand, the 9 great beasts were a force under Wuxia's command. The two positions were not on the same level. However, after looking at the panda's eager gaze, Wuxia contemplated for a moment and carefully chose his words. "Now, under my command there are already 6 great beasts already. If you want to become one of the beasts, you can become the 9th great beast." 9 is an extreme number, and the 9th great beast represents both mystery and terror. All right. Ashish. In Chinese culture, the number 9 is often associated with the concept of forever, or eternity, because it sounds similar to the word for long-lasting or forever, pronounced as Geo. It is considered an auspicious number, and it's often used in various contexts to signify longevity, permanence, and positive outcomes. The number 9 is also linked to the idea of completeness and fulfillment. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 213, approaching spiritual energy tide. The arrival of the 9th beast, Brewmaster, was totally out of Wuxia's expectations. Nonetheless, out of respect for the strong, Wuxia granted Brewmaster, the panda, the treatment he deserved. He already had 6 beasts under his command, with thorns being the 6th. And now, he directly skipped 7th and 8th beasts, bestowing upon the panda the title of the 9th beast. One can imagine what this signified. At least for now, the panda could not stop smiling. Speaking of which, Wuxia's inspiration for the name, Brewmaster, for the panda came from a character in a game from his previous life, just as his abilities drew inspiration from what escape and other powers from various shows and movies. The name was fitting for the panda, whose abilities could indeed be likened to that particular Brewmaster. He had the strength of a bear, the agility of a cat, and the control over 3 elements. His terrifying combat power once made the name Brewmaster resound throughout the world. And now, Wuxia had similar expectations from this panda. Then, as if he had thought of something, Wuxia looked toward the nearby panda and asked, "Do you need spirit stones?" "Spirit stones?" Yes, the panda, now known as Brewmaster, responded. Speaking of this, Brewmaster turned to look at the nearby Qing gang and added, "Lord Divine Tree, the big guy said you have an earth attribute spirit stone mine, and I also have a fire attribute spirit stone mine. How about we share them? After all, 1 spirit stone mine is more than enough for 1 person." Just as he proposed this, a look of embarrassment showed up on Brewmaster's face. After all, anyone with discerning eyes could tell that he had set his sights on the Earth Attribute Spirit Stone mine. Be that as it may, Wuxia smiled and did not mind at all. He had always intended to grant Brewmaster some of the Earth Attribute Spirit Stone mine. A talent like him needed spirit stones, especially those of different attributes, to greatly enhance his strength. As for the Fire Attribute Spirit Stone mine mentioned by Brewmaster, it was totally out of his expectations. He raised his eyes and looked at the Qing gang, who nodded his affirmation. I see, Wuxia muttered in his heart with some realization. I guess there is a pretty big Fire Attribute Spirit Stone mine deep in Raya Mountains. With this in mind, Wuxia agreed, of course we can share our Earth Attribute Spirit Stone mine. He then added, do you mind if I move the Fire Attribute Spirit Stone mine from your place to here? No, not at all, Brewmaster replied, shaking his head repeatedly. He then took another big sip of wine and added, grinning foolishly, the Fire Attribute Spirit Stones are of little use to me now. So there is no harm giving them to Lord Divine Tree. I seem to have taken advantage of Lord Divine Tree this time. Having said this, the plump panda, in the bewildered gazes of many mutant beasts, fell on the ground intoxicated. Wuxia sighed, feeling a bit helpless as he looked at Brewmaster. Of course, he felt more joy for the addition of the 9th great beast in his group. He then shifted his gaze to the nearby Qing gang and asked, Qing gang, moving the Fire Attribute Spirit Stone mine should not be difficult with your current strength, right? Not at all, Qing gang replied confidently, grinning. Lord Divine Tree, I can easily create a tunnel to Raya Mountains by myself. After which, we can ask some storm wolves and wild boars to help with the transportation. That's great. Wuxia nodded his satisfaction. This was the terror of an earth elemental life form. Compared to the hard work he had put into excavating underground tunnels, Qing gang could easily create one on his own now. There was no need for further discussion, or rather, no more words were necessary. The discovery of a Fire Attribute Spirit Stone mine was immensely beneficial to the entire North Canyon. Nine Tails and the human form of Ling Air both needed Fire Attribute Spirit Stones. Of course, Wuxia might need them as well. Simply absorbing one type of element could have side effects. But if he could gather different types of Spirit Stone mines, he could neutralize those effects. With his terrifying absorption speed, he could easily and rapidly increase his spiritual energy in a short time. This might be the fastest way for him to accumulate millions of spiritual energy. Different attributes of Spirit Stone mines would also be hugely beneficial to him in various ways. Since an Earth Attribute Spirit Stone mine had allowed Wuxia to develop an Earth Element Divine ability, other attribute Spirit Stone mines were likely to be just as helpful. Wuxia could not help but be filled with a sense of anticipation. It was worth mentioning that Spirit Stone mines were generally quite large. Even a small Spirit Stone mine was enough for a person to cultivate for several years. Although the mutant beasts of North Canyon were powerful, a small Spirit Stone mine could still support their cultivation for quite a number of years. As such, they did not need to worry about depleting the Spirit Stone mine. For instance, Wuxia's medium-sized Earth Attribute Spirit Stone mine had depleted by 1/10 only even after Wuxia and the others had cultivated for such a long time. Furthermore, most of this 1/10 got depleted when Wuxia developed the Earth Attribute Divine ability, Crystallization. This showed just how vast Spirit Stone mines could be. Meanwhile, out of Wuxia's knowledge at the Parliament of China, the 9 people with the highest authority in China were meeting, and all of them happened to be wearing solemn looks on their faces. It's not just our China, the concentration of spiritual energy in every continent is abnormal. If our speculation is correct, the second round of the spiritual energy tide mentioned in the spiritual energy tide theory is about to sweep through the globe in 1 or 2 days, warned the director of the Spiritual Energy Monitoring Bureau, standing up with a serious expression. The spiritual energy tide sweeping through the globe. The president of China heaved a sigh as his expression darkened. Then, as if he remembered something, he asked, "What do you expect will happen this time?" As he asked this, the president of China looked around at everyone. Aside from General Li, all 9 of China's most influential figures were present. As for General Li, according to the president of China's speculation, odds were against him. Unfortunately, with the impending spiritual energy tide sweeping through the globe, there was hardly any time to deal with this matter. At this moment, hearing the president of China's question, an elderly woman stood up and responded, "If my speculation is correct, this time the continent will experience an epic level upheaval." Saying this, the elderly woman added a reminder, "So please be prepared for the dark age." The president of China fell silent, a rare ordeal in itself. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 214, the last subjugation and the choice of the transcendent hedgehog. That night, North Canyon was no longer silent. The return of various major mutant beasts had made the entire North Canyon lively and bustling. However, at this moment, as his roots reached deep into the earth, Wuxia narrowed his eyes slightly. Just one more day, murmuring to himself, Wuxia's gaze turned toward the night sky, lost in thought. He had no idea what kind of changes the second round of spiritual energy tide would bring to this world, but he was sure that a true era was about to begin. Before that, it's time to grant the mutant beasts a great opportunity. With this in mind, Wuxia's gaze shifted to the North Canyon and he calmly stated, "The second round of spiritual energy tide is about to arrive. I can use my divine ability to guide it to the surface. The colorful spiritual energy will provide an opportunity to undergo transformation. Of course, it's more likely that you would not be able to withstand the colorful spiritual energy and might even die from it. So I'll give you a choice. If you don't want to, you can leave." His gentle voice echoed in North Canyon, causing countless mutant beasts to be slightly stunned. After a moment, White Tiger stepped forward on his own, as if he had made up his mind. "Master, a coward dies 1,000 deaths, but a brave one dies in but one. In 18 years I'll be better." Before he could finish speaking, a willow branch whipped him, sending him flying. "I told you not to say that." Saying this, Wuxia's gaze shifted to the weaker mutant beasts such as the storm wolves and wild boars not far away. If even powerful mutant beasts like White Tiger could not withstand the colorful spiritual energy, Wuxia would be pretty furious. If they remained so useless even after nurturing them for so long, what was the point of everything then? White Tiger's face turned slightly stiff, feeling a bit embarrassed. After a while, when he followed Wuxia's gaze, did he realize what Wuxia meant? He was just being foolish again. At this moment, a long howl reverberated through the canyon as the leading storm wolf stepped forward. "Lord Divine Tree, please have mercy on us." Wuxia immediately understood the storm wolf's intention. Because of their thirst for power, these guys are reluctant to leave. But this way, North Canyon will inevitably be bathed in blood. As these thoughts swirled in his mind, Wuxia sunk into silence. Nonetheless, compared to the canyon bathing in blood, it would be a whole lot better for the storm wolves to usher in a new breakthrough. Thinking of this, Wuxia began to calculate. At this moment, Wuxia, as if he had thought of something, turned his gaze, this time toward the corner of the canyon where two transcendent monitor lizards and transcendent hedgehog were bound by countless roots like dumplings. "Either submit or get destroyed." A voice as cold as coming straight from an icy cavern rang in the three transcendent creatures' ears, so cold that it could send a chill from the soles of one's feet to the top of their head. Unfortunately, the response to Wuxia's ultimatum was a series of angry roars. Roar, roar! The two transcendent monitor lizards struggled desperately as their eyes turned bloodshot. As a male and female pair, they had given birth to a huge lounge of monitor lizards. However, now most of their offspring had been slaughtered by Wuxia. With such deep-seated hatred, how could they possibly submit? Wuxia understood this point very well. Mutant beasts' hatred should never be underestimated, especially since most of them had gained a certain level of intelligence after the resurgence of spiritual energy, which made their understanding of hatred even deeper. With this in mind, Wuxia heaved a helpless sigh. "What a pity," Wuxia regretfully stated. Yet the next moment, much to the horror of countless mutant beasts, roar, roar! Two screams of agony suddenly echoed through the canyon. As everyone looked toward the source, two mutant monitor lizards happened to be tightly bound by the roots in the air nearby, roaring in agony. The roots were bound around their bodies very tightly, so tightly that the monitor lizards happened to be bleeding. At the same time, the roots happened to be expanding and contracting, as if they were swallowing something. In just a moment, the aura of these two transcendent monitor lizards had weakened significantly. And at that moment, Wuxia exerted force again. Crack, crack. The very next moment, much to the countless mutant beasts' awe and horror, the two transcendent monitor lizards were reduced into lifeless corpses followed by crisp cracking sounds. The formidable and majestic transcendent creatures were unable to put up the slightest resistance before the divine tree. The strength of the divine tree was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. Of course, it was mostly awe-inspiring. Simply because, thanks to the protection of the divine tree, they did not have to worry about perishing from the whims of powerful beings one day. Ding, you have killed a Tier 1 Transcendent Monitor Lizard, evolution points plus 30,000. Ding, you have killed a Tier 1 Transcendent Monitor Lizard, evolution points plus 40,000. Listening to the crisp notification sounds in his ears, Yuziyu's lips curled slightly. Clearly, slaughter was the fastest way to gain evolution points, especially when assassinating powerful mutant beasts. The harvest was even more significant. Just 2 Transcendent Monitor Lizards had provided him with 70,000 evolution points. This speed of gaining evolution points had far surpassed what he had experienced before. At this moment, as if he had discovered something, Yuziyu's gaze shifted to the many mutant beasts not far away, each with a burning desire in their eyes. These guys must have been waiting for a long time, haven't they? He smiled and, with a wave of his branch, sent the corpses of the 2 Transcendent Monitor Lizards flying toward the center of North Canyon. The corpses of 2 transcendent creatures were a great blessing for these mutant beasts. Even White Tiger, who had already become a Tier 1 Transcendent, happily bit into a thigh. Meanwhile, as a nauseating stench of blood filled the air, Yuziyu's gaze turned to his final prey, the Transcendent Hedgehog. However, compared to the stubborn and unyielding attitude of the Monitor Lizards, the Transcendent Hedgehog was now trembling uncontrollably. The sight of the 2 Transcendent Monitor Lizards getting strangled little by little had left a deep impact on him. At this moment, when he looked at the divine tree, his eyes were filled with fear. Now, I'll give you one last chance, submit or get destroyed? As cold as ever, it sent shivers down the spine of the Transcendent Hedgehog. Especially when the roots tightened around him, his fear only grew. However, that was not the most despairing part. What was truly despair-inducing was that a group of storm wolves had gathered around, their shiny green eyes locked onto the hedgehog. I submit. With a tone of lament, the hedgehog clearly conveyed his intention. That's great. With a faint smile, Yuziyu dispersed the storm wolves around the hedgehog. This was a psychological tactic, slowly breaking down the hedgehog's mental defenses bit by bit. As for the Transcendent Monitor Lizards, their hatred ran deep, making them difficult to subdue. But there was hope for the Transcendent Hedgehog, and luck had favored him once again. Yuziyu had gained a valuable subordinate. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 215, Transformation and the Insane Evolution. Race, Mutant Hedgehog. Rank, Tier 1 Transcendent. Innate talent, razor-sharp armor. Its body is covered in razor-sharp quills, which can be soft as feathers and hard as metal. Is one of the most terrifying weapons. Unique abilities, Quill Fire. It instantly shoots its quills within a range of dozens of meters using spiritual energy. Spike Defense. It contracts its sharp quills to resist most attacks and even counterattack. Quill Storm. It fires its quills like a rain of arrows, accurately striking distant enemies. Quill Regeneration. It can regrow its quills at a terrifying speed with sufficient spiritual energy, potentially keeping up with their consumption rate. Innate Source Quill. It can nurture a quill with its essence, blood and spiritual energy called Source Quill. The Source Quill possesses hardness and sharpness tens of times more than ordinary quills. Once it's fired, it will surely tear the enemy apart. Caution. Once the Source Quill is fired, the Transcendent Hedgehog will also be severely injured, it might even put its life in danger. Staring deeply at the 3-meter-tall Transcendent Hedgehog not far away, Yuziyu was amused. He had not expected it to have such an ace up its sleeve. Innate Source Quill, huh? Muttering to himself, Yuziyu raised his gaze slightly and examined the Transcendent Hedgehog. Indeed, one needs to have some tricks up their sleeve in order to become a Tier 1 Transcendent. At the very least, with the Innate Source Quill, it would be quite challenging for Sarcosuchus to withstand its Source Quill. While it might not be able to kill Sarcosuchus in one strike, it should inflict significant damage to him. Thinking about it, Yuziyu could not help but wonder why this little guy had not used this trump card before. After a moment, an aggrieved young girl-like voice echoed in the air, "There are so many of you." Yuziyu was slightly taken aback before he realized the reason behind the aggrieved voice. In the face of North Canyon's large force, the Transcendent Hedgehog could not use its Innate Source Quill. If it did, it would seriously injure itself, leaving itself with no chance of turning the tide. All right. Yuziyu loosened the roots binding this little one before instructing it to go to a certain corner. At this moment, he looked around North Canyon. Ha! The next moment, a heavy sigh escaped his lips as his face turned serious. It's time to guide the arrival of spiritual energy tied to North Canyon in advance. A step ahead of others would prove to be a huge opportunity. Bringing the spiritual energy tied to North Canyon in advance would increase the concentration of colorful spiritual energy. This would benefit mutant beasts in the area. With this in mind, Wuxia suddenly shouted, "Let's get it over with." Instantly, his spiritual energy started surging. The entire North Canyon started shaking wildly, as if it was experiencing an earthquake. At the same time, boom, boom, boom. Deep underground, hundreds of meters below the surface, countless roots surged like earth dragons, constantly moving around, bringing streams of colorful spiritual energy. In no time, much to the bewilderment of countless mutant beasts in North Canyon, the surface of the entire North Canyon began to bulge. After a while, boom, 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 one after another, roots tore through the surface, reaching for the sky. And accompanying these roots was vast and incredibly rich colorful spiritual energy. In just a moment, the colorful spiritual energy had filled the entire North Canyon, along with its surrounding areas. Ha! With a look of disbelief, the golden ant stared at his golden scales. The colorful spiritual energy happened to have surrounded him, giving off the impression of being in a dream. At the same time, a torrent of energy continuously surged into his body. Slowly, his golden scales grew thicker as he started trembling non-stop. A desire filled his heart, surging straight down from his core. A trace of ecstasy appeared on the face of the usually cold and proud golden ant. Roar. A shrill roar shook North Canyon. At this moment, the body of golden ant happened to be continuously expanding. Even more terrifying and suffocating was the ferocious and domineering aura that was spreading without restraint. At the same time, torrents of colorful spiritual energy gushed toward Golden Ant, as if they had found their owner. Upon a closer look, Golden Ant happened to be surrounded by a colorful cocoon of spiritual energy. The cocoon happened to be expanding and contracting as if it was swallowing something. The increasingly oppressive aura caused most mutant beasts to feel suffocated. They felt as if a ferocious monster of unmatched proportion was gestating. On another side, Ruhar, a tiger's roar resounded through the mountains and forests. Its source, White Tiger, happened to be standing on a steep cliff. Having just finished his meal, he suddenly opened his mouth wide as torrents of colorful spiritual energy surged into his body like a flood. What surprised Wuxia was that two bulges had appeared on his back. This guy, seemingly aware of Wuxia's gaze, White Tiger let out a long roar, unable to contain his excitement, which was clearly visible on his face. "Lord Divine Tree, this is truly a tremendous opportunity." As he stated in an excited voice, the colorful spiritual energy surrounding White Tiger became even denser, to the point where even Wuxia could not see his figure clearly. It seems that this guy is about to undergo a transformation. Chuckling lightly, Wuxia shifted his gaze. After a while, his gaze landed on a pack of storm wolf. However, at this moment, Wuxia's pupils could not help but slightly contract. A woo! Suddenly, a painful cry echoed in the canyon as the body of a very tall storm wolf gradually started ballooning at a speed visible to the naked eye. Then, with a deafening bang, it blew up into pieces. Someone could not withstand it after all? With a hint of helplessness, Wuxia created a passage leading to the outside. If you can't withstand it, leave. The concentration of colorful spiritual energy will only continue to increase. After listening to Wuxia's voice, while crying in pain, a few storm wolves and mutant wild boars finally chose to leave with reluctance. Opportunities were indeed opportunities. Be that as it may, they were also a nightmare for low-level mutant beasts. Otherwise, the apocalyptic scene of the darkest days for mankind would not have occurred when countless sea creatures invaded the continent. Right at that very moment. Crack. A crisp sound rang as if a bottleneck was broken. Looking toward the source, Wuxia noticed Honey Badger crouching in a corner, surrounded by lightning. But this was not the most astonishing thing. The most astonishing thing was that his claws were slowly growing bigger. Crackle. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning cut through the air, heading straight for a spot not far from him. The next moment, with a deafening and thunderous clap and violent earthquakes, a several-meter-deep charred crater appeared on the ground. Has he broken through? Wuxia muttered to himself, feeling a bit satisfied. Things had turned out as well as he had expected. Right at the very beginning, someone had managed to break through. Certainly, more mutant beasts would break through in the next few days. Moreover, outstandingly talented mutant beasts might even undergo a terrifying transformation. Like the leader of Black Chimpanzee Underground, King Kong. Apparently, he had chosen to sleep when he came into contact with the colorful spiritual energy. Be that as it may, his body was growing bigger at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just a short while, he had grown over 10 meters tall. Such an astonishing rate of growth even made Wuxia narrow his eyes. It could only be said that colorful spiritual energy indeed had mysterious qualities. More or less, it activated the latent innate talents of some mutant beasts. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 216, Transformation of the Mist. The colorful spiritual energy gushed forth with a deafening boom like a fountain. In just a short moment, almost half of the canyon had turned into an ocean of colorful spiritual energy. However, at this moment, through the rift torn by Wuxia, the visible colorful spiritual energy began to spread throughout Misty Mountains. At this moment, everyone and everything shrouded in colorful glow seemed to be undergoing a transformation, constantly evolving. Old trees were growing lusher and thicker. Each and every vines were growing longer and longer, coiling around everything like dragons. Lush spirit grasses adorned the land, and spirit flowers bloomed everywhere in the mist. And this was just the beginning. Upon closer inspection, even the rocks seemed to have become harder and denser. This was a newly born world. Everything was starting anew from this point on. Even the air was filled with spiritual energy. Roar, 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 roars and howls kept reverberating through Misty Mountains. The countless mutant beasts were cheering as if celebrating. It was far better than the dense and persistent colorful spiritual energy of North Canyon. For these mutant beasts of the inner region, this kind of spiritual energy was just right. Under the effect of the colorful spiritual energy, the claws of mutant beasts grew bigger and sharper, and their bodies more robust. At this moment, eek! Sharp screams rang from the mountaintop as the tribe of mutant macaque that Golden Monkey had subdued began to get excited. Breathing the whiffs of spiritual energy, their changes became particularly obvious. But regardless of their physical changes, their peak spiritual energy was constantly increasing. In just a short while, the spiritual energy of these low-level mutant beasts experienced an explosive growth. Peak spiritual energy of a few of them had even reached 6,000 to 7,000. They had truly become high-level mutant beasts. High-level mutant beasts were more than capable of tearing apart a fully armed human squad. However, such terrifying beings were now appearing in groups. While the second round of spiritual energy tide arrived in North Canyon, and even in Misty Mountains. In the distance, as if sensing something. Roar, 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 beastly roars and howls shook the sky. At this moment, if one were to look toward the source, they would definitely notice that the gazes of countless mutant beasts were directed toward Misty Mountains. That phenomenon, where even the mist was tainted with a colorful hue, was enough to make every mutant beast obsessed. Madness. True madness. The longing from the depths of their hearts and souls drove every mutant beast to madness. The colorful spiritual energy was akin to poison, but if one could withstand it, it was a true blessing. And now, the whiff of this opportunity had triggered the bodily instincts of the countless mutant beasts. Roar, 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 roars and howls shook the earth. Just at that moment. Roar. A tiger's roar reverberated through the sky, so loud and powerful that the resulting shockwaves of it sent the leaves flying in all directions. The deafening roar echoing between the mountains sounded like peals of thunder or the surging torrents of water. Looking toward the source, a giant yellow tiger the size of a small mountain was charging toward Misty Mountains. On another side. Screech, 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 high-pitched screeches that could tear people's eardrums rang across the sky as countless birds filled the sky. From afar, it looked as if dark clouds were passing across the sky with a shocking momentum. However, what was most shocking was the flock of mutant birds flying at the forefront. It was a wake of mutant vultures. Each of them had a wingspan of 7 to 8 meters, and their bodies seemed to be on fire. Every time they flapped their wings, a sea of flames would spread through the sky, surging toward Misty Mountains. Apparently, the mutation of Misty Mountains had even alarmed these mutant birds of the desert. Meanwhile, in a city not far from Misty Mountains, countless people stared in astonishment at the distant mountain which was radiating colorful hues. That was one of the forbidden zones recognized by humans, the Misty Mountains. Access was strictly forbidden, and those who dared to trespass would find themselves entombed for eternity. A home to countless mysterious mist beasts and unknown creatures as well. So far, no one has returned alive from the depths of Misty Mountains. Rumor had it that even one of the 10 secret units of China had failed to return alive. Regardless of whether this was a rumor or not, the horror of Misty Mountains was plain evident. And now, this terrifying place happened to be undergoing a new transformation. However, for some reason, as they looked at the emerging colors, the superhumans who possessed spiritual energy all felt a slight longing rising from the depths of their soul. If it were not for reason telling them that Misty Mountains were a forbidden zone, they would have instinctively advanced toward Misty Mountains, unable to control their footsteps. What's that? Someone asked the question that was bogging everyone's mind. However, before they could discuss it, a heavily armed soldier pushed them back. At this moment, if someone were to look at the entire city from the sky, they would definitely see countless soldiers guarding the entire city. Far away in other cities, fully armed convoys were heading straight for Misty Mountains. The second round of the spiritual energy tide is here, but it came so quickly and suddenly, and also rose from Misty Mountains that just became a forbidden zone. Oh, well, Misty Mountains do indeed have some problems, but unfortunately, we don't have time to take care of them now. In a mysterious place, two middle-aged men dressed in military uniforms were calmly discussing. And then, as if thinking of something, one of them asked, "What should we do next? Should we do something about it?" Do something about it? How can we? Next, the entire China will be undergoing a major transformation. Not only the Heart Mountains and old forests, but the spiritual energy tide will even sweep through the cities. What we need to do is calm the public and ensure that when the second tide arrives completely, the cities remain as calm and peaceful as ever. Speaking to this point, the other middle-aged man adjusted his green military cap and added, "By the way, spread the news of the spiritual energy tide, and also disseminate the spiritual energy cultivation method and various combat techniques that we have compiled. I believe that after this spiritual energy tide, China should have produced quite a few outstanding talents." Listening to the other middle-aged military man's proposition, the other soldier was slightly taken aback. Then, he helplessly sighed and tentatively asked, "What about the ancient martial arts side? Are they not going to take action?" Take action? With a cold smile on his face, the middle-aged military man harumphed and stated, "Those old geezers are currently enjoying the benefits brought by the spiritual energy tied to their heart's content. They don't have time to bother with us." Huh? A sigh escaped the other military man's lips as helplessness surged through him. Ever since they lost General Li, China had indeed lost control to some extent. Especially with the arrival of the spiritual energy tide, which had made some people restless. Now, not to mention establishing their own power, but there were already some who were no longer following orders. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 217, the disappeared nine-tails and bull demon. Meanwhile, in the far reaches of the western desert. Thud, 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 accompanied by heavy footsteps, two figures slowly emerged. One was a black bull, very robust, and with two huge crescent horns stained with blood. At a glance, an imposing aura was emanating from it. However, what was puzzling was that every time this black bull's hooves touched the ground, instead of sending sand flying, it created a vortex beneath its feet. It appeared as if it was supported by an invisible force, and this gave off a strange impression that could not be explained with words alone. The other figure, on the other hand, was different. Or rather, this figure exuded an extreme sense of flamboyance. Its fiery red fur billowed like a cascade of silk, while its eyes concealed a flickering, enigmatic flame within their depths. However, what was most astonishing was that this fox had two tails. Yes, two tails complementing each other. Even if they gently swayed, they stirred up a frenzy of sand. It was none other than Bull Demon and Nine Tails. Old First and Old Second of the 9 great beasts under Yu's commands. One was as steady as ever, and the other was even more captivating. "Elder sister, it's about time we head back, right?" "Ah." Nodding slightly, Nine Tails stated in a human voice, "This did take quite a bit of time." Her voice was quite pleasant, resembling the melodious notes of a yellow oriole. It was clear and loud but also gentle and soft. In human terms, her voice could be described as mature and elegant. However, what was astonishing was that a mutant beast like Nine Tails was actually speaking. If Yuziyu found out about this, he would probably have a hard time believing it. However, at this moment, as if remembering something, Bull Demon growled in anger, "If it weren't for that damn Desert Snake King, how could we have been delayed until now?" Iche. Sighing, Ninetails also felt somewhat helpless. Having been the target of a ruler of the desert like the Desert Snake King was definitely not a good thing for her. If it were not for Bull Demon's arrival, she had no idea how much longer she could have held her own against the Desert Snake King. Moreover, it was worth mentioning that the Desert Snake King was a Tier 2 Transcendent. Even though it had just broken through with a spiritual energy of just over 130,000, it was still unquestionably a Tier 2 Transcendent. Nonetheless, despite being such a formidable creature, it had not been able to defeat Ninetails for a long time. Even more surprisingly, when Bull Demon arrived, his fangs-like horns tore through more than half of the Desert Snake King's body, inflicting severe injuries. It was a proof in itself of how much the two beasts that had followed Yuziyu from the beginning had grown. Furthermore, Bull Demon had awakened the gravity field and had his own buff. No matter how strong one was, once one entered his field, they would have their combat power reduced. And relying on precise control of the gravity field, Bull Demon could easily slaughter hordes of weak mutant creatures. For instance, not that long ago he first used tenfold gravity and then reversed the gravity. The juxtaposition of these two bizarre forces had squashed a den of mutant sand snake before they could even react. And this was the Bull Demon of today. He had already begun to touch the terrifying existence of the supreme power of gravity. Apart from Bull Demon, Ninetails in her current state was even more admirable and formidable. When she ventured into the desert, not only did Ninetails advance to Tier 1 Transcendent, but she also evolved a peculiar bone in her throat that Yuziyu had mentioned. In true sense, she had achieved the ability to speak. However, this was not the extent of Ninetails' harvest. As a formidable mutant beast who had managed to survive the chase of a Tier 2 Transcendent for half a year without suffering any harm, her journey in the desert this time had brought her astonishing encounters. A spirit flower with 9 petals happened to be blossoming in the depths of the desert. It was this very spirit flower that Ninetails had devoured. Although she had been pursued by the Desert Snake King for half a year, Ninetails had truly gained a formidable talent this time. However, rather than saying she gained it, it was more like she unlocked a terrifying innate talent unique to the Fox clan, hidden deep within her bloodline. There was a legend among humans. According to the legend, there existed a branch within the Fox clan that was the cleverest and most mysterious of them all. Furthermore, the legend stated that the number of their tails would continue to increase along with their cultivation. They would have grown 2 more tails after 100 years of cultivation, and would be known as fox monsters, and with 1,000 years of cultivation, they would have a total 6 tails, becoming spirit foxes. And when the number of their tails had reached 9, they would have already achieved the supreme realm in the world of monsters. No one knew how many years of cultivation it would require to reach this stage. Be that as it may, according to the legends, when a fox had grown a total of 9 tails, they would become a peerless monster, capable of having godlike powers, and were known as the 9-tailed celestial fox. It might have been just a legend, yet its enduring existence over such a long time suggested the possibility of concealed truths. And the innate talent Ninetails had now awakened was the mysterious bloodline talent called Celestial Fox. This talent also happened to carry the hope that Yuziyu initially placed on the name of the Red Fox, Ninetails. Bloodline talent, Celestial Fox. It can grow an additional tail with each advancement, each tail carrying a formidable talent. Within this very simple description, an unprecedented bloodline talent was unveiled. And this was the current Ninetails. A formidable existence that was worth Yuziyu's anticipation, and one that could even be nurtured with great effort. At this moment, Ninetails and Bull Demon suddenly stopped and slowly raised their heads. Even though they were separated by millions of kilometers, inexplicable fluctuations struck the strings of their hearts. That direction is? Murmuring to herself, Ninetails' eyes flickered with a hint of brilliance. Misty Mountains. Bull Demon responded in an unusually grave voice, deeply gazing toward the east. Misty Mountains. The strange fluctuations were coming from their home. Under the resonance of these strange fluctuations, they felt as if they were being summoned as an urge to take a step forward surged within them. Exhaling a long deep breath, Ninetails and Bull Demon exchanged glances, and saw the seriousness in each other's eyes. "Let's go," Ninetails shouted, her fiery red fur starting to flutter. In a moment, she transformed into a magnificent streak of light, rushing straight toward the direction of Misty Mountain. Whereas Bull Demon's hooves pawed the desert sand. Moo! The next moment, a bellow filled with energy reverberated through the desert before he transformed into a streak of black torrent, rushing straight toward Nine Tails. However, what they did not know was that the current state of Misty Mountains was far more terrifying than they could imagine. Or rather, Yuziyu's act of introducing the spiritual energy tied to Misty Mountains had attracted too many greedy gazes. Swathes after swaths of mutant beasts converged from all directions like tides. What was worse, it had even affected the nearby human cities. In the sky, densely packed flights of avian creatures were crossing over the city's airspace, heading toward Misty Mountains. However, it was also at this moment deep within North Canyon. A cold laughter slowly echoed in the air. The impromptu plan crafted just before the arrival of the second wave of the spiritual energy tide has proven to be worthwhile. The voice carried a touch of cruelty and deep amusement. Of course, even more so, there was an undisguised satisfaction. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 218 Terrifying Beast Tide. Indeed, Yuziyu had made a plan, and his plan was to use the spiritual energy to attract numerous mutant beasts. Except, he had not expected that it would attract so many mutant beasts, to the point that it formed a huge beast tide. Ha ha ha, smacking his lips, a trace of anticipation welled up in Yuziyu's eyes. Hundreds of thousands of evolution points or maybe even millions. With a light smile on his face, Yuziyu's spiritual energy surged slowly through his body. The only concern Yuziyu had at this moment was whether going on such a killing spree would cause damage to the environment or not. But after giving it a thought, Yuziyu suppressed the last trace of worry in his heart. It was an era of impending chaos, where the strong were respected, and he was just protecting a group of creatures. Finding a reason convincing enough for himself, a firm resolve flashed in Yuziyu's eyes. Moments later, spiritual energy surged like a tide, constantly flowing toward his roots. Boom, 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 the ground started shaking continuously. The entire Misty Mountain seemed as if waking up from its slumber. Waking up like a ferocious beast of the prehistoric era. Just the terrifying aura filling the forest alone made the pupils of countless mutant beasts contract. But at this moment, whether they should retreat or not was no longer up to them. There was a torrent behind them. Attempting to retreat at this point meant certain death. Countless mutant beasts had their eyes bloodshot with greed, and they would not hesitate to trample over the hesitant ones in front. Because of this, even though countless mutant beasts sense a huge impending crisis ahead, they could only grit their teeth and charge ahead. Asterisk boom boom boom, like waves, the beast tide poured into the outer periphery of Misty Mountains. 1000. Or maybe 5000. Or perhaps even 10,000. No one could say for sure. But the momentum was like 1,000 horses galloping. It completely shook the entire Misty Mountains. The continuous vibrations spread through the earth and reached the heart of North Canyon. But before the mutant beasts in the depths of North Canyon, who were still immersed in their cultivation, could open their eyes, a gentle voice rang in their ears. Don't worry, continue with your cultivation, leave this to me. Yuziyu's gentle as a spring breeze voice immediately calmed their hearts. As a result, one by one, the mutant beasts chose to return to their cultivation in silence. At this moment, looking at the black beast tide blotting the outer periphery of Misty Mountains. Yuziyu let out a long deep breath. Today the mountains will be stained with blood. As he spoke, the earth suddenly split apart with rumbles. The next moment, a deep and bottomless crevice, dozens of meters wide, continued to extend into the distance. At this moment, if one looked closely, they would definitely notice a terrifying root resembling a dragon rising from the earth with a deafening roar. This was one of Yuziyu's subroots. It stretched for dozens of kilometers, reaching the outer periphery. Even just rising a little from the ground had torn the earth apart. Boom boom boom, much to the horror of countless crazed mutant beasts, a chasm as deep as an abyss started extending from afar, accompanied by deafening rumbles. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of mutant beasts were swallowed by the crack in the ground before they could even react, or rather they simply had no idea how to react to this situation. Roar, roar, roar. Amidst the mournful wails, Yuziyu's subroot rose from the depths of the crack before countless tiny rootlets shot out like poisonous snakes. Asterisk schlick, schlick, schlick. Accompanied by crisp and clear sounds, the tiny rootlets struck with deadly precision, killing these mutant beasts that had fallen into the crevice with one attack. Then the tiny rootlets coiled around the carcasses, wrapping them up like dumplings and suspending them on the subroot. Ding! You killed Tier 0 Level 5 Mutant Wild Boar, Evolution Points plus 50. Ding! You killed Tier 0 Level 3 Mutant Rabbit, Evolution Points plus 30. Ding! You killed a Tier 0 Level 3 Mutant Frog, Evolution Points plus 30. Clear chimes of the system notification sounded one after another, but Yuziyu them no mind. Instead, a determined expression filled his face. Rise! And the next moment, a towering tree root resembling a dragon rose from the earth with a deafening roar. Hanging on it were the heads of countless mutant beasts. And at that moment, boom, accompanied by a terrifying howl, a violent wind swept through the forest before a dark shadow cast above countless mutant beasts. But before they could react, the subroot that had risen from the ground slammed down hard. Bam! The next moment, a heavy and resounding rumble shook the heavens and the earth as an even more terrifying crack extended toward the horizon, as if the very earth had been ripped asunder. At the same time, the nauseating scent of blood grew thicker. At this moment, if one paid attention to Yuziyu's subroot, they would see that it was stained red with blood. With just this strike, hundreds or even thousands of mutant beasts had been forever buried deep within the earth. Ding! You killed Tier 0 Level 3 Mutant Fox, Evolution Points plus 30. Ding! You killed Tier 0 Level 5 Mutant Black Bull, Evolution Points plus 50. The clear notification sounds continued unabated. Be that as it may, when he gazed at the still incoming tide of mutant beasts, Yuziyu curled his lips, revealing a cruel smile. It seems that I'm not ruthless enough. Saying this, Yuziyu turned his gaze at the sky. Countless flying creatures happened to be continuously rushing in, like a sea of black clouds. Shoot them down. As Yuziyu spoke, his main body trembled slightly before countless willow leaves fell one after another. After a moment before anyone could react, willow leaves swished toward the sky in succession. Schlick, schlick, schlick. With the crisp sounds akin to blades cutting through flesh and blood gushing out, countless avian creatures fell from the sky like kites with broken strings, wailing in despair. This was a massacre. A true massacre. At least until a really powerful beast emerged, Yuziyu's subroots and willow leaves were enough to massacre these invading mutant beasts. But just at that moment, as if sensing something, Yuziyu's face suddenly changed ever so slightly. Ruhar. The next moment, a tiger's roar shook the mountains and forests, rocking the entire mountain range. In the distance, a giant yellow tiger, the size of a small mountain, pounced towards Yuziyu, landing heavily on his thick subroot. After a moment, its paw, brimming with astonishing spiritual energy, ruthlessly slapped down, knocking Yuziyu's thick subroot down a little with a bang. Peak Tier 1 Transcendent? Yuziyu's heart sank slightly as he narrowed his eyes. In the distance, he spotted several mutant beasts exuding terrifying auras emerging from the horde of beasts. A fearsome black bear, several meters tall, with a savage look in its eyes. A giant black python the size of a water barrel. And behind them, countless mutant beasts pounced toward Yuziyu's subroot. Interesting. Yuziyu smiled in his heart, showing no concern. Rather, he allowed these mutant beasts to press down on his root. However, there was no denying that there was strength in numbers. In just a moment, Yuziyu felt as if his subroot no longer belonged to him. The overwhelming weight of the root made him somewhat unable to bear it. Not to mention that the mutant beasts were vigorously mobilizing their spiritual energy, attempting to tear through the defense of Yuziyu's subroot. At this moment, if one were to look along Yuziyu's subroot, they would surely see that his entire subroot was being pressed by countless mutant beasts above the ground. Each mutant beast was like a black spot, but there were so many of them that Yuziyu's entire root was dyed completely black. People with trypophobia would probably faint just by looking at it. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 219 Miss Storm and the Might of Tier 3 Transcendent. You all can just go to hell. As the corner of Yuziyu's lips curled into a cold smile, his spiritual energy started surging. In a moment, much to the horror of countless mutant beasts, the thick subroot to which they clung began exuding an ominous and formidable suction force. Boom. The next moment, like a huge fish gulping water, a storm visible to the naked eye appeared. Immediately, the mutant beasts lying on the tree roots flinched slightly. However, before they could react, their spiritual energy started leaking wildly from their bodies like a flood. Roar, roar, roar! One wail after another rang as weaker mutant beasts were directly drained of their life force, becoming nothing more than husks of skin. As for the stronger mutant beasts, they were having a really hard time holding on. Even the giant yellow tiger that was as large as a small mountain bit off its own paw and retreated like crazy. At this moment, when the fleeing mutant beasts looked at Yuziu's subroot, their eyes happened to be filled with fear. A demon, a true demon. The mutant beasts cried in astonishment in their hearts. They wished they could grow 2 more legs to escape this hell. However, could they? Yuziu pursed his lips into a smile as he extracted the tremendous amount of spiritual energy from his root, using it as nutrients for himself. Ha, I'm the natural nemesis of mutant beasts. Yuziu lightly sighed before a cold smile played on his lips. The next moment, Yuziu's subroot lying flat on the ground suddenly shook. Then, in the despairing gazes of the innumerable mutant beasts, countless tiny rootlets on the subroot suddenly rose up. Asterisk swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Immediately after, they swept through the sky and earth in an instant like a pack of pythons. Most of the mutant beasts could not even escape in time before they were pierced through. Then, even more terrifying suction force emanated from the small rootlets. At this moment, if one looked toward Misty Mountains, they would surely witness a shocking scene. Countless rootlets reaching the heavens and earth charged toward the beast tide, like a den of poisonous snakes. As the ancient saying goes, use the enemy force to achieve one's own goals. And now Yuziu, by virtue of his ability to consume spiritual energy through the roots, had used the spiritual energy of countless mutant beasts to nourish his own. This way, Yuziu was able to unleash astonishing power without expending too much energy, truly achieving the ability to fight thousands, or even tens of thousands of enemies single-handedly. This was the advantage of being a tree. It was also the incredible power that could only be displayed by plants. When plants became powerful, they did not have to be afraid of being surrounded. Roots, stems, leaves, all were extensions of their limbs. As long as there was enough spiritual energy, they could use as many as they wanted. At this moment, sharp and piercing croaks rang through the forest as the temperature in half of Misty Mountains began to rise. Looking up, a wave of fire could be seen at the horizon, rushing toward Misty Mountains. Well, what's that? Yuziu narrowed his eyes, focusing his gaze toward those unknown flying birds in the sky. Race, mutant vulture. Rank, Tier 1 Transcendent. Innate talent, wings of flame. As a fire attribute bird, it possesses unique wings of flame, which not only grant it instant explosive burst in speed and power, but it can also create waves of fire. Unique abilities. Scavenging. By consuming corpses, it can significantly increase its own spiritual energy and even heal injuries. Waves of flame. It can create a wave of fire with a flap of its wings. Meteor firestorm. Flapping its wings and hissing, it stirs up its spiritual energy, and creates meteor-like projectiles by compressing flames that bombard the earth. Mutant birds from the desert, and Tier 1 Transcendence at that, Yuziu muttered to himself as his pupils slightly contracted. It was because this time it was not just 1 or 2 of them, but a total of 7. 7 fire attribute Tier 1 Transcendent birds. What did that mean? In the next moment, they had already provided Yuziu with an answer. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Accompanied by sharp and piercing hisses, these 7 extremely large mutant vultures came to a halt in mid-air. Then, in the next moment, dense fire attribute spiritual energy began to gather in the sky. It was fast. Very fast. In the blink of an eye, the horizon was dyed red. It looked as if swathes of clouds were on fire. It had to be brought to notice that it was in the middle of the night. But these guys had dyed the clouds of the night sky red. More importantly, countless football-sized fireballs had gradually formed high in the sky. You're courting death. Yuziu roared as a trace of anger flared up on his face. He did not attach much importance to a single mutant vulture. But when these 7 simultaneously manipulated the fire element, it was not as simple as 1 + 1. Moreover, judging by its momentum in the sky, it gave the impression that it would sweep through half of Misty Mountains. Obviously, these mongrels intended to bury the entire Misty Mountains. After all, as far as they were concerned, so long as there were carcasses left, it was enough. By the time they had burned everything to ashes, this spiritual land, which was nurturing the colorful spiritual energy, would belong to them. Thinking of this, Yuziu's expression grew colder. Originally he had wanted to hold back a bit. But by the looks of it he could not hold back any long air. At least, looking at the sky where fireballs were falling like raindrops, Yuziyu had no intention of holding back. While these fireballs posed no threat to Yuziyu, half of Misty Mountains that he had cultivated for such a long time would be razed to the ground. With this in mind, Yuziyu's vast and boundless spiritual energy suddenly spewed forth. Mist storm. With a low shout, the fog that enveloped the entire Misty Mountains started glittering like a starry night. These were traces of surging spiritual energy. It was also Yuziyu's deeper understanding of mastery of mist. After a while, the dense mist started billowing, forming a huge vortex. Boom, 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 rotating, it kept accelerating until it became a towering storm of mist. But what startled all the mutant beasts was that this mist storm covered dozens of kilometers, blocking out the sky. And right at this very moment, the meteor firestorm created by the 7 mutant vultures also came bearing down one after another. Boom, boom, boom. The next moment, explosions rang one after another as the fireballs crashed into the accelerating storm, setting off earth-shattering explosions. Much to the 7 mutant vultures' surprise, this monstrous mist storm had actually blocked all of their attacks. If not for the fact that at this moment, the grayish mist storm had been dyed red by the flames and turned into a storm of flames, they would have doubted whether their attacks had even been launched. But just at this moment, a loud and resonant shout suddenly echoed across the sky. Die! Followed by the roar, a humongous arm suddenly emerged from the sea of fire and storm. This arm was incredibly huge, as big as the sky itself. Furthermore, it happened to be composed of mist. And at this moment, this arm formed from mist and with flames entwined around it reached toward the 7 mutant vultures in the sky. The hand had covered the entire sky, nothing less than that. This was the true power of Tier 3 Transcendent. One could contend against an entire nation alone. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 220, The 3 Generals. A deafening boom reverberated through the half of the night sky. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Suddenly sharp and shrill hisses echoed, shaking the entire sky. The mutant vultures not only did not retreat but shot forward with even more ferocious flames, charging straight toward the humongous hand of mist. You guys are courting death. A cold snort escaped Yuziyu's lips. Do I really look like an easy target? Or have they grown accustomed to flaunting their strength in the desert that they dared to act arrogantly even here? Thinking of this, Yuziyu's anger flared even more. At the same time, the spiritual energy surging within the towering giant hand became even more terrifying. Faintly, silver electric arcs could be found lingering inside and around the hand. Yuziyu's spiritual energy was so strong that it distorted the magnetic field, resulting in the phenomenon of lightning and thunder. This phenomena was a proof in itself of the might of Yuziyu's giant mist hand. Despite this, the mutant vultures continued to flap their fiery wings and charge ahead. It was clear how ignorant they were of their own capabilities. They are courting their own disaster, I guess. With a cold smile, Yuziyu's palm descended upon them. The very next moment, a deafening crash shook the sky, giving the impression as if the sky itself was about to collapse. Faintly mournful cries could be heard as Yuziyu's misty giant hand brought all 7 of them crashing down to the earth. They resisted and struggled. However, everything was futile in the face of Yuziyu's vast spiritual energy. This was an insurmountable disparity in levels. Moments later, with a deafening crash, the plain forest had been reduced into a valley as Yuziyu's enormous mist palm embedded itself deep into the earth. At this moment, if one were to look from the sky, they would lay witness to waves of dust tens of meters high billowing outward and numerous cracks extending from the edge of Yuziyu's giant palm. The resulting shock waves uprooted the nearby trees, and even sent some smaller mutant beasts flying. This was the might of Yuziyu's palm. It was also one of those rare times when he had used 30% of his full strength. However, at this moment as he slowly raised his gaze, looking at the sky and even the vast land below, Yuziyu's pupils could not help but shrink a little. The endless tide of beasts that could not be killed truly vexed him. Yuziyu was now vexed. Although he had only made 2 moves, he had already killed tens of thousands. Not to mention the thousands of mutant beasts he directly slaughtered, the most terrifying part was the carnage left in the wake of his actions. Just like now, countless rootlets from his subroot were still acting like a plague of pythons, strangling any mutant beast that came near. In the sky, the terrifying storm of mist and gusts of wind swept away countless birds, keeping them at bay. Even if there were some mutant birds that wanted to push their way through, they would be instantly killed. Only a few feathers and drops of blood would fall. And right at this moment, the corners of Yuziyu's lips curled up slightly as if sensing something. "You are awake?" Saying this, Yuziyu's gaze turned toward a nearby young girl who appeared to be emerging from the flames. It was none other than Ling Er, the human body with astonishing fire elemental talent possessed by Qing Er. Astonishing. "Master, do you need us to take action?" A faint smile tugged the corner of Ling Er's lips, who was surrounded by fluttering fiery red butterflies. "Would you like to?" Yuziyu asked with interest, smiling. "But of course. I don't even know how strong I'm right now." Saying that, Ling Er lifted her toe. In an instant, she transformed into a streak of fiery red light, disappearing from Yuziyu's sight. However, feeling the extremely powerful fire element energy, Yuziyu could not help but narrow his eyes. This girl. She seems to have already become a peak Tier 1 Transcendent, just a step away from becoming a Tier 2 Transcendent. With these thoughts, Yuziyu shifted his gaze. The next moment, one mutant beast after another awakening from slumber entered his sight. "Lord Divine Tree," everyone shouted in unison, their growls filled with determination. "Have you all advanced as well?" Lightly chuckling, Yuziyu's gaze locked onto Honey Badger, Armored Wild Boar and Golden Monkey, the three generals. "Lord Divine Tree, we are willing to charge into battle for you." Stepping forward, the mischievous Golden Monkey, holding a wooden stick, spoke with a serious expression. Slightly taken aback, Yuziyu nodded as he looked at the determined expressions of Honey Badger and Armored Wild Boar behind Golden Monkey. "Go ahead." At his words, the three generals exchanged glances before sharing a knowing smile. Generals are born for charging into battle. Today we should demonstrate our dominance. With these thoughts, an incredibly powerful surge of spiritual energy began to rise. Crackle, crackle. Suddenly, lightning crackled in the sky as a thunderbolt as thick as a water bucket fell from the sky. Growl. Honey Badger growled as the hair of his silver mane stood on their ends. At the same time, crackling electric arcs surged around him. "Lord Divine Tree, I'm going." Addressing Yuziyu with this title for the first time, Honey Badger shot him a deep look. Then, with a flash of lightning, he disappeared from the depths of North Canyon. The only thing remained were the arcs of electricity, seemingly telling the tales of his amazing speed. At this moment, Golden Monkey also climbed onto Armored Wild Boar's back. "Brother Boar, aren't you going to charge?" Taking a gourd from his waist and sipping from it, Golden Monkey scratched his head and asked with a laugh. Snort, snort. After making 2 consecutive grunts, Armored Wild Boar, standing at a height of 10 meters, resembling a black fortress from a distance, began his charge into the distance. Along the way, even the trees strengthened by colorful spiritual energy seemed as fragile as paper, easily splintering into distance. What was even more unbelievable was that Armored Wild Boar was getting faster and faster as he continued to charge, displaying the momentum of never backing down. Barbaric charge. The more it runs, the faster its speed becomes, until its speed cannot be controlled. At that point, Armored Wild Boar is the most terrifying. This was a terrifying ability and it was the most suitable for charging into battle. With this one ability, Armored Wild Boar was more than capable of penetrating deep into the enemy lines. As for whether he would return alive, that would depend on luck. In case there were mutant beasts capable of breaking his defenses, he would then be in trouble. However, after giving it a thought, Yuziyu could not help but smile wryly. Armored Wild Boar's defenses could already be described as terrifying at Tier 0. And now when he has become a Tier 1 Transcendent, and his body is surrounded by a layer of spiritual energy, mutant beasts capable of breaching his defenses should be few and far between. And even if there were any, it was not a problem either, as Golden Monkey was also there. However, Yuziyu could not help but feel that Golden Monkey seemed a bit different from before. He had changed a little, but Yuziyu could not quite put his finger on it. It's like he has become smarter, or should I say more mature. In a rare moment of perplexity, Yuziyu gazed at the back of Golden Monkey, his eyes flickering. Evolution begins with a big tree, Chapter 221, The Strange Staff Technique. In Misty Mountains, the tranquility of this mountain range was disrupted on this very night. Roars and growls reverberated through the night sky. Countless mutant beasts were charging toward Misty Mountains like madmen. At this moment, their instinctive desire from deep within their bodies was secondary, it was the smell of blood that drove them now. Everywhere, crimson blood was flowing down the ravines, so much so that even the mist was tinted with a reddish hue. Roar! A bear's roar reverberated through the forest as a massive mutant brown bear charged through the forest. With a crisp snap, a thin rootlet ruthlessly struck the brown bear. However, what was astonishing was that this thick-skinned bear resisted the lash and even grabbed hold of a thin rootlet. Roar! Roar! The mutant brown bear let out roars in excitement. Apparently, resisting the thin rootlet was a matter of great pride to it. However, that was indeed the case. Compared to most mutant beasts who would get pierced through at first contact with the thin rootlet, it was already quite an impressive feat for a Tier 0 Level 7 mutant brown bear to be able to grab hold of the thin rootlet. However, that was all there was to it. Just because at this moment, tap, 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 accompanied by light footsteps, a figure slowly emerged from the thick fog. The figure was quite slender, and had fire-like long hair that were dancing in the wind. However, as she looked at the bloody battlefield, a faint smile appeared on her lips. "It's been a long time since I went on a killing spree." Saying so, she lifted her feet and tapped the ground. The very next moment, the ground was scorched black with a deafening boom. Then, using the rebound from the ground, Ling Er instantly shot toward the battlefield. Her first target was the mutant brown bear that had grabbed a section of Yu's rootlet. "You're so ugly." With a hint of disgust, Ling Er's palm gently landed on the shoulder of the mutant brown bear. At the same time, a murmur suddenly sounded in the air, "Fire bomb." The voice was soft and gentle, but in the ears of the mutant brown bear, it was like a nightmare. Because in the next moment, a deafening explosion and extreme heat surged from its shoulder. Before it could even react, the 3-meter-tall mutant brown bear was on fire, turned into a ball of fire. As Ling Er moved on to another mutant beast, a charred carcass slowly fell to the ground. On the other side, compared to Ling Er's violence, the three generals Honey Badger, Armored Wild Boar and Golden Monkey were showcasing what it meant to charge straight ahead. Crackle, crackle, crackle. Crackles rang one after another as a lightning bolt as thick as a water bucket shot out from the mist, drawing a Z shape in the air as it struck deep into the midst of the beast tide. Along the way, countless residual silver-white arcs wove a net along the path that Honey Badger came from. Growl? With a shrill growl, Honey Badger's entire body was ablaze with dazzling arcs of lightning, resonating with the arcs along the way. After a moment, in the horrified gazes of one mutant beast after another. With a deafening thunder, a silver-white glow dozens of times denser and brighter than before surged into the surrounding like a fountain. In just a moment, mutant beasts within hundreds of meters in Honey Badger's vicinity were all cleared out, leaving only twitching mutant beasts on the ground. Of course, there were many mutant beasts who did not even have the chance to twitch. They had been reduced into charred carcasses, deader than dead. Lightning Field. Thanks to its deeper mastery of his own lightning, Honey Badger is now able to stimulate residual electrical arcs in the air to form a lightning net, covering a large area. This was quite a domineering ability, and when combined with Honey Badger's naturally unreasonable disposition, its destructive force could not be described with words alone. "Flathead, you're getting stronger and stronger." With a light laugh, Golden Monkey, who was holding a long staff, suddenly leaped off the charging Armored Wild Boar. "I'll go left, you go right, let's clear out this area." Calling out to Armored Wild Boar, Golden Monkey tightened his grip on the long staff. Immediately afterward, he swung the staff fiercely toward a humongous python not far away. The next moment, a deafening rumble echoed as a tremor passed through the ground. Looking up, half of the humongous python was smashed into a pulp. Teeth, clicking his tongue, Golden Monkey's eyes flickered with a hint of reminiscence as if recalling something. Yet, in the midst of this recollection, a very strong smell of blood suddenly wafted from behind Golden Monkey. Immediately after, much to the mutant Black Panther's perplexion, its teeth shattered into pieces. At this moment, as it slowly raised its head, the mutant Black Panther saw a pair of mocking eyes. "You dare to attack me when you can't even break my defense?" After looking at the white teeth marks left by the mutant Black Panther on his shoulder, Golden Monkey sneered coldly. Then he fiercely swung the long staff in his hand. Roar! The mutant Black Panther let out a wail as it was sent hurtling dozens of meters away, crashing into a large horde of mutant beasts approaching Golden Monkey. But in light of the fact that the mutant Black Panther was cut in half, presumably it would not survive much longer. "You can't even take a hit." Smiling, Golden Monkey tightened his grip on the long staff and charged toward the beast tide. The three generals were never afraid of being surrounded. One reason was that they all had tough skins and impregnable defenses. The second reason was that each of them had their own means of self-preservation. Honey Badger was as fast as lightning, while Armored Wild Boar charged forward without hesitation. Golden Monkey, on the other hand, was agile and possessed self-taught martial arts. Yes, martial arts. It could not be explained, it could not be described, but it truly existed. At this moment, if one looked at Golden Monkey, they would see him wielding a wooden staff and effortlessly taking on mutant beasts of the beast tide without suffering a single scratch. Every time he swung the staff, his attack would take the life of mutant beasts. When did this guy become such a skilled fighter? Looking at Golden Monkey in the beast tide from a distance, dancing with his staff, taking on 10 or even 100 enemies, Wuxia could not help but reveal a strange expression on his face. After all, according to his speculation, Golden Monkey should have relied on his formidable defenses to charge straight through the beast tide. It never occurred to him that he would come up with something like this. He was using martial arts, which was a little similar to martial arts of humans. Wielding his staff, dodged and attacked, hitting the enemy without even taking a single hit. A tumultuous stream of profanity surged through his mind as Wuxia fell into a momentary silence. He estimated that even humans who had played with staff for decades couldn't handle it as well as Golden Monkey did now. More importantly, Golden Monkey was genuinely impressive. How gaudy, complaining in his mind, Wuxia could not help but wonder. Golden Monkey had indeed undergone some changes compared to before. This kind of staff technique was not something a mutant beast should be able to use. At least, not at the moment. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.